third and last day of City as a Service Palermo Urban Thinker Campus. Before starting with the last plenary session, we will have a drafting session in which some of the speakers that hosted the session on or a lab yesterday will discuss briefly about the contents of the discussion and what was done yesterday. So I would like for first to introduce my colleague, Toti Di Dio, which was the rapporteur for yesterday's plenary session that will talk about the contents we were discussing yesterday. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So yesterday was about research and development in the domain of academic research or company research. The session was moderated by Simone Tulumello, and he introduced the theme of the real transdisciplinary research. So he underlined also how it is relevant for academics to go out of the university and meet the people, the real world, and how it's also useful for companies too. So he asked if we have to design for better city in every scale. The first intervention was from the Professor Carta. He talks about a new paradigm, augmented city. He said that city is not a service right now, but probably in the future. He said that the challenge is about the open platform, as only the collaborative spaces we need. He talked also about the Dolek urbanist. There is the guy who only put out regulatory plans, and he underlined how it's important to have new tools to reach resilient services. Of course, he said data are useful to understand the urban environment, and we don't need no more master plan, but he suggested a city forming approach. After him, we had Mr. Compagno from SAT Microelectronics. He talked about his company, 40,000 employees. In Sicily, there are 4,000. And they basically do microchips. So the first element of the new technologies, the kind of element that enable services. We asked him about Arduino. There is an open platform, an open hardware, and he said that Arduino is good for prototyping. It's low cost, but it's not the answer for the real world. So, and then he said that they are developing a board very similar to Arduino. But he also said, after the conference to a bunch of people with them, that something is changing. They're moving from a B2B market to a B2C market. Then we had Professor Azzori from the University of Cagliari. He didn't talk about his research, but he talked about a spin-off of the university called GreenShare. The focus is on the users, on the customers, so on the citizens. He talked about a carpooling project called Klaxoon, and he said that it's very hard to foster people to change bad habits about urban mobility, and we totally agree. He had, of course, very academic approach. So he also said what were the fundings of the research, even if it was an applied research. And he said that users, so citizens, do not read any guide. Mobile is the future. Partnerships are crucial to develop services. And innovation is a matter of hybridation. Then we asked about the data they gathered, and he said are used only for research, and so they don't sell data about urban mobility. Then we had Virginia Filippi, CEO of eCare. eCare is a CRM company. They are like 2,400 employees in Italy. So she tried to do not talk about cities, but about citizens. So she started from a concept, an idea of the marketing domain that it's customer, consumer is king. And when we are service users, we usually are treated like lords. But when we are citizens, just citizens, we are usually vassals. So then she said that public officers should be and act like civic servants. There is another way to call public officers. So the customer is king approach is to be the approach to build the future of cities. So around the citizens, citizen is the king. Then she said it's always about relationship between human beings, even if is a public servant or is a citizen. And then she ended her contribute saying that improved citizen experience is actually their new business of her company. And they're working on two domain of project for new cities about mobility and health. Then Professor Carlo Medaglia from the Lincoln University talked a little bit about his research, but actually is the Chief Operating Officer of Roma Mobilità. So his applied research became more and more complex. His lab now is the city. So it's very similar to what Arthur Serra said the day before. City is a lab. It's the best lab where you can do your research. So they're dealing with very complex topics. So city, mobility, sustainability, money, that there is no money, of course. So the main issue they're trying to solve are public transportation. So they are trying to have more efficient public transportation, fostering people to sustainable habits on transportation, sharing mobility, and they're working with cycling manufacturers to have bike sharing also in Rome. There is the last big city in the world without a bike sharing. He talked about the importance of data, also Professor Medaglia, and about how it's important to talk to the people to get this data. Now they're working on traffic lights, and he said it's the only way to improve traffic condition without touching the city in any way, because they are trying to prepare Rome to the Jubileum. There is in 3 months, and the tourists will be from 12 millions to 25 millions, so it's gonna be huge for Rome. At the end we have Mr. Leuzzi from Cisco Systems, and he of course presented the company, and he talked about systems. For him, the problem that cities are dealing with is that systems do not talk together. They are like silos. So systems are a system of mobility, system of health, a system of city management, and if they don't talk, it's very hard to improve it. Then he underlined the value chain for better cities improvement. So it's technology on the first, then processes, and then governance. They're trying to be in each of these steps, but the processes for him are the most important thing we have to dealing with. Then Simone moderated the debate, and we started with the divide issue of technology improvement, but they all said we will overcome it. No problem with the divide. But I think there was other concepts, of course, but I think it's the time to give the stage to Simone for the other parallel session report. Thank you very much.
Good morning again. Well, I'm Simone Turmello from the University of Lisbon and the ISO Young Academics Network. Again, thank you, Push, for having invited us, the YA network, of sharing our activities with this important event. Well, we organized 2 sessions in this event. Yesterday we had the second one. Our idea was to create a space for debating from a more critical perspective, the same thematic of the wider conference. And yesterday we talked actually also about data divides and technological divides, especially the thematic of our session was technology and informality, technology and bottom-up organization. Mohammed Saleh from the University of Groningen was the moderator. And we had 3 papers, one from Israel, one between Macedonia and Kenya, and another one between Brazil and Switzerland. The first speaker was David Bea from Technion in Haifa. And he approached the thematic of the rise of surveillance in through technology in contemporary societies, especially in the Western world, and how this is fostering growing suspicion between citizens. And so he tried to build a different vision for security, imagining security not as an individual right to be protected, but as a collective right to be built in societies. And so he tried to imagine, it's a project in course of being idealized, and hopefully they realize, about community-based public spaces in which playful activities can foster security without necessarily relying on technological surveillance. Then Anthony Bonada-Fax and Vanessa Bonada-Fax talk about how urbanization nowadays is happening in the South and how the challenges for global urbanization should be looked from the South, from the global South. The problem is, in their opinion, and actually I share this opinion with them, that nowadays our urban theories are dominated by Western thinking. So we need to look from the other way around to start better understanding the future of urbanization. So their proposal was to look at best practices from the South, which usually we look at the other way around. We want the best practice in the global north, in developed city, and then we want to apply them in the global south. They say, no, let's look the other way around, and through cases in Ahmedabad, Curitiba, Medellin, Cape Town, and Karachi, they're trying to explore how innovation in governance, in government, in service providing is going on in the south of the world. Then Michele Vianello and Leonora Grceva moved another step towards how learning from the South could be useful for the North. And they've been engaged in an experience of bottom-up data collection in Nairobi, in Islam in Nairobi, namely practices of community mapping and enumerations, which are useful for the acknowledgement of the settlements and then the stabilization of the tenure security of people living in those settlements. And then they are exploring the possibility to import these practices in Europe, namely for the upgrade of illegal Roma settlements in Skopje, in Macedonia. And so the questions emerging, which I think are wider questions for all us, are who owns the data? Whose data we collect? And what purpose we have for data we collect? I mean, again, on the divides, depending on who has a smartphone nowadays, we collect data. So then the debate widen up to more issues which are relevant well outside the world of informality and the world of growing urbanization. So the dichotomies we already highlighted yesterday about surveillance and privacy, and the relation between academic produced knowledge and bottom-up produced knowledge, the role of academia. Somebody asked, should we academicians be activists nowadays? Probably yes. And finally, the concept of community, which sometimes is seen as the solution to every problem. Just let the communities do what they want. But in a world shaped by global challenges, maybe the relation between community and what we made on the regulation, what governments are going to make, which is the theme of today's plenary session, is the point for the urban futures. And that's all. Thank you. Chi è il prossimo?
We have two more reports from yesterday. The first one will be provided by Professor Zela Tesoriere, and the last one by architect Gianmaria Socci.
So, good morning, everybody. I'm Zela Tesoriere, and I'm an architect, professor. I teach and develop my research, well, at least a part of my researches at the University of Palermo, whether another part of them is carried out at the LIAT, which is Laboratoire de Recherche sur les Infrastructures, l'Architecture, le Territoire, and is located in the School of Paris-Malaquais in Paris. Yesterday, in the evening, I led a session entitled Promised Lands, How Residual Urban Matters Can Prompt City Regeneration. And I invited two other speakers beside me in this session. They were Professor Renzo Lecardane and Professor Manfredi Leone. The three of us, we are working at the University of Palermo, and Renzo Lecardane is an architect as me, whether Manfredi Leone is a landscape designer. Our researchers share a common vision towards some central issues relating architectural design to urban structures regarding contemporary cities. And through a special and figurative approach, the session we ran out yesterday proposes some key factors to debate what direction a marginal, shrinking Mediterranean city as Palermo should take in order to face the new challenges of our era. In the city we need, bottom-up processes can really influence political decision. In the city we need, sustainable architecture is definitely not the juxtaposition of certified green buildings, rather than a vivid, complex city which combines slow mobility, density, and living public space in a long-term project. In the city we need, architecture must enable urban space to proceed towards cyclical process and no more towards linear processes. And in the city we need, there is not one identity, but a multiplicity of identities overlapping and intertwining themselves in order to allow all the communities sharing this city to express their identities. So more precisely, we ran 3 sessions and mine regarded the results, a part of the results of research that I am running, is an ongoing research that I am running since 5 years. It concerns how to implement and transform the motorway that crosses Palermo, the circumvallation of Palermo, which is our ring road. It's not just a ring because it's just more like an urban highway cutting Palermo and splitting it up in two parts. And as a motorway, an urban motorway, it generates a linear sequence of leftover fragmented spaces that deserve better focus to deeply express their huge formal and architectural potential to be easily converted in an urban boulevard. And Professor Le Cardane, after, addresses the issue of slow mobility through the hypothesis of an ecological urban infrastructure that he has called Palermo Urban Green Line, and which is located in a large site in the western part of the city. And then our session has been closed by the intervention of Professor Leone, which regarded the history of Parco Uditore. Parco Uditore in Palermo that can evocate how new trends in low budget and participatory landscape architectural practice can change some of those residual urban matters. So, thank you.
Hello, good morning. I'm Gianmaria Socci. I'm an architect and urban designer. I'm currently part of the team of Urban Think Tank at ETH Zurich. And I'm also one of the members of Ines Baiardi, which is the first cooperative of architecture professionals in Italy. I was part of a parallel session which was titled The Several Futures of City Planning. And I've been asked to sum up the results of this session. So the idea of the session was that each speaker was going to present his own perspective on the innovative strategies of city planning. The session was well balanced, representing both professionals and academia. We can start from Valentina Vaccaro, who has presented her ongoing PhD research, and she basically gave us a comprehensive analysis of the state of art of the implementation of smart apps and multifunctional services in the public administration, listing several different case studies ranging from European to international examples. Next was coming Lorenzo Lunardo, who has showed us the work of his own company, which is called Renurban. Basically, Renurban offers a platform which is free and integrated in order to bring together public administration, non-profits, and the users of a social network. The idea is to collect data from data and audience from the social networks in order to provide, on one hand, the public administration with a very transparent tool to express their governance, and on the other, to give visibility to the initiatives of non-profits. The system is completely free for the users, only non-profits pay a very small annual fee, which of course grants them a much broader visibility. Next was coming Irem Ayansi Onai, who has presented the results of her PhD. She's working and living in London now, but she studied at the University of Istanbul. Her PhD was based on an analysis and assessment of the use of monitoring and evaluating techniques in urban planning, especially in the realm of institutions. It was basically a comparative study between Berlin and Istanbul in this case, showing the strengths and the weaknesses of the different approach to monitoring and evaluating. The basic idea is that for city developers to keep track of the process, which means monitoring, so sort of drafting data, and at the same time evaluating ongoing, brings to a much more successful implementation. The last intervention was by myself. I've presented the outcome of some of my research and design work, in particular in Rio de Janeiro and Athens. My thesis was to suggest a new approach to urban design in which the public space leaves some room for the improvisation and the spontaneous appropriation by the users, the citizens, as a mean of resilience and inclusiveness. My idea is that if we want to design resilient cities in the future, we have to take into account how people are going to modify and use the space. That's why I was presenting our research in informal settlements in Rio de Janeiro, and on the other hand, how to bring back sort of a citizenship, sense of belonging in the center of Athens, which was a totally disrupted urban space. To sum up, I would say that to reframe the title, which was The Several Futures of City Planning, what we have showed is that city planning has many different paths it can take in the future, but all of them tend toward lean approaches and to take advantage of this renewed shared democracy. So to use the power of bottom-up practices, mixing them with the top-down implementation from the administrations. Thank you.
Actually, we got a last report that will be made by architect Daniela Patti. So please.
Good morning to everybody. So I'm Daniela Patti, and together with my colleague Levente Poliak, we run both an association and a company based between Vienna, Rome, and Budapest. And we've been going on ongoing research now since about a year and a half on the topic of local markets, food markets, and in particular with the case study of the city of Rome. The situation is that surprisingly, even though Italian food culture is thriving, food markets are heavily underused, reason why public administrations are often thinking of selling them out. And this started up a question on what is the future of food markets? Can we think of a way of regenerating them? Not as in cases as we've seen somehow, which exclude part of the population to be able to access the prices of the food that is sold locally. So with this research questions, we started questioning how could food markets continue to be local hubs somehow of social life, of quality food, and of a series of services at local level. And with this question, we came to Palermo, which has a very, very thriving market culture, which for those of you who are not of Palermo, I definitely suggest to go and visit. And we used the occasion to invite some interesting practices from Palermo that are exploring different aspects of markets. In particular, we invited Street Tour Palermo, written EAT. And this was actually very interesting. They organize a series of tourist tours around the markets to explore both the food culture and the history that is connected to it. And we also had another interesting experience from Palermo, which was Edizioni Precarie. They publish books with paper coming from packaging of food, and so they're exploring different aspects of the food industry. And with this, we, together with the participants, we also had a series of interesting inputs also from, for example, about different alternative monetary currency from cases in Spain, about how this could be another way of adding additional value to the commerce at local scale. Now, this is an ongoing question, really. How do you engage the local citizens? How do you engage the food vendors? How do you engage also different economic stakeholders that can contribute to this? I would say that we cannot, I must confess, we do not have a conclusion to this question. I think if it were possible to solve it only in a couple of hours discussion, I think we probably would be too easy, wouldn't it? But I can say that we have had a very, very interesting input on the case of Palermo, which we will re-elaborate with all the inputs we received, and we will be happy to share with you in the coming days as soon as it's further elaborated. And I must say that the cherry on the cake of the whole thing was then to go for a nice aperitivo in the market of Il Capo nearby and really conclude with the workshop participants the experience of the market visit, which I would definitely recommend to any of the participants. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot to all the rapporteurs. And now we're going to move into the last plenary session, and I would like to introduce the chairman of the session, which is Professor Ignazio Vinci, Professor in Urban Planning at the University of Palermo. Before giving to him the microphone, I just would like to remind you that this event is on live streaming on our website, so on www.utc.wepush.org. So we are on World Wide Web, and anyone can follow the session. So please, Professor.
Good morning. Many thanks everybody for attending this final plenary session of the Urban Thinkers Campus. As previously said by Domenico, my name is Ignazio Vinci. I'm an urban planner from the University of Palermo. Urban planners are generally reluctant to radical innovation, apart from the kind of innovation that they can easily handle in the everyday practice. So additional thanks to the organizer for this trust and for putting in my hands such a relevant panel of experts in the fields of innovation. Today the session will be about the role of the public sector in promoting innovation within the perspective of the conference theme, which is City as a Service. Starting from the assumption that innovation is a controversial concept and can be changed very much its meaning in relation to the context in which it is placed, I try to put some additional questions in addition to those raised by the conference program about the day. The first question is, which can be the role of public sector and the public policy making in stimulating, driving, or regulating innovation at the city level. The second is how they can act to bridge the gap between the public and the private domains, which is a very crucial issues if you try to understand positive interactions between in process of innovation starting from a bottom-up process and trying to put their outputs within a process of institutional innovation, which is very complex. The other is, do we need a regulative role of the public sector? Innovation is also a process of interaction between the private sector, the market, and the public policy, which has different rationale. And we need standards, for example, we need benchmarks. How can we, and to which extent we have to regulate innovation processes locally? The other issue, and the final issue, is which kind of bridges we can make between social innovation in domain and institutional innovation processes. The impressions is that sometimes we have to process processes that go ahead in parallel, and there are difficulties to cross this process and to exploit positive outcomes from both processes. This morning we have a very diverse and stimulating panel of keynote speakers. They are all people working with or within the public sector at different scales with different perspectives, also professional, scientific, academic perspectives. So before giving them the floor, I'm going to briefly introduce them and outline their professional background. The first speaker is Jean Barroca, from the Municipality of Fundao, Portugal. He has been project manager of a huge number of European projects on open innovation strategies, the creation and dissemination of new services through ICT applications, and is involved in many initiatives and networks on the smart city domain. Then we have Jesse Marsh, which is an international consultant with an extensive experience in innovation processes, information society, sustainable development, democratic participation, and cultural development. Over the last couple of decades, he had operated in Sicily, so I'm eager to understand how innovation processes can happen in such a complicated, problematic context. Yvonne JANSEN-DINGS from the Netherlands. She works as a project manager at the Waag Society, and she also the chair of the CODO Europe Research Network. She has led several projects on local, national, and European level in the fields of civic participation, citizen participation, civic engagement, and open data. Francesco Molinari, which is, I don't see him, hi. Now currently research associate on frugal government. I'm very curious of this topic. At the Politechnic of Milano, Department of Architecture and Urban Studies. As a policy advisor and research manager, he has worked for about 15 years with several public and private clients in Europe, national and regional authorities in Italy, and also in Europe. And our last speaker is Alessandro PIRANI, which is a partner of the change management consultants and CEO Gruppo, based in Bologna. It deals with many fields like e-justice, local digital government, policies, entrepreneurship, and food. He's also a member of many networks and organizations like Global Services, JAM Community, Milan Center for Food Law and Policy, and Future Food Institute. So I'm going to give the floor to Jean Barroca for his intervention. Thank you, Jean.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I was feeling a little bit powerless without the pointer, but now I'm okay. So my name is Jean Barroca. I work for and with the Municipality of Fundao, among other things. I'm also a consultant in the topics of smart cities and open innovation for the World Bank, where I work not only, actually not in Europe with the bank, but in Africa and Latin America. And what I'm willing to share with you today is this case of Fundao. Fundao is a small municipality in the center of Portugal. It's actually a very small municipality. The whole territory has 30,000 inhabitants. And some years ago, we started to establish what we called an innovation plan for the city. As you will see, for us, it was what we thought that it could be one of the ways out of the main big challenges that all these kind of municipalities face in Europe. So Fundao has, as many other municipalities, an aging population. So as you can see, the total amount of youngsters in 1960 was basically changed and they are now exactly in the same proportion than the amount of elderly people. At the same time, the total population in 1960 was around 45,000 inhabitants, and it's today around 30. So we are losing population, and population is getting older. We also have another problem, which is unemployment. So we do have a huge number of people that do not have a job, and as you can see as well, we are nowadays, does this have a pointer? No, it has. Oh, it doesn't work. No, because it points there, but it doesn't, more or less. So the idea is the number of employees that we can find, that people that do not have employment, according to the levels of education, it actually shows that there's a huge opportunity gap that people are missing. And if we go to the ideas of unemployment throughout age, we can also see that we have lots of elderly people that do not have employment nowadays. Actually, some of them could be retired, and rightly retired. That's a problem of governments thinking that people should retire almost at 70 nowadays. But you also have younger populations that are without any opportunity. So what could a place like this do? And we thought that we could not strive for a business as usual strategy. And why is that? Because we were facing a big economic crisis, and so we had none of the usual incentives of a normal municipality. We had no money, we had no talent, we were not in the mainstream of the places where a company would invest. So we had to differentiate. We had to find another way of doing things. At the same time, we could not invest in building new places. So we had to reinvent the city. And what we did was what we called at the time an open strategy, which was the first thing was to revitalize and reuse spaces, not build new spaces, but revitalize and reuse spaces. Second one was to support and promote those who were willing to invest and those who were willing to come and move to Fundao. A third one, which was to create unique events, unique initiatives, so that people would be alerted by the existence of that small municipality. And the fourth one, which was a continuous effort to communicate and promote the territory. That was part of what we decided we should do. And the most interesting thing was that we thought, this is very interesting, but unless we do it in a very open way, it's not going to work. We need everyone to be part of this strategy. Everyone from the city needs to understand and to be part of this strategy. So we called it an open mind strategy, which was based on open arms, which means hospitality, receiving well people that come from abroad. Open culture, the idea that tolerance is also one of the bases for success. Open source, because we wanted to have it IT-driven and IT-focused part of the strategy, and I'll show you why. Open government in what regards transparency, collaboration, participation, and open for business. Unless we have investment, and unless we have new companies coming either from abroad or from inside, we cannot strive, and we cannot have a successful strategy, and we cannot have well-being in the territory. So what we put together was a living lab. And the idea of the living lab was we have many ideas, many different ideas of possible solutions, but we cannot do all of them, and at the same time, it's not only the municipality that does it. And I'll start going to the role of the municipality. So the municipality in Fundao cannot be the only motor for innovation. It cannot be the only driver pushing the strategy. So the idea is, let's try to do some things, let's try to test other things, let's try to involve others to take the risk of investing in some other things. So one of the main things, because it was a quick win, was to involve local producers into a networking effect to sell the products of Fundao. Fundao, not here, but at least in hopefully sometime internationally, but nationally at this moment is well known for its cherries. So Cereja do Fundão, the cherries of Fundão, it's a very good label. So having the producers working and networking to promote the product nationally and internationally was one of the first ideas. And why was that? But because first, it was a way to prove that networking could generate benefits. Secondly, it was a way to prove that and a way to set the point that we're not going to work in this together, we need you. And by we mean the private sector. And thirdly, because it was a way of generating more revenue and generating employment. Second thing, we decided that in the center of Fundao, which is an area that really needs reconstruction and rehabilitation at this stage, we would invest in providing opportunities for creative industries, for entrepreneurs. So we did this concept of house and workshop based on how things used to work. So basically nowadays, if you are an artisan, if you have your own idea of a business, you can apply for support from the municipality, and they will get you a little shop in the center of the village, of the city, where you can have your business, and that's supported by the municipality at this stage, at least at the beginning. Also, we had the co-working spaces, which were rebuilt by reusing old spaces. I will go there. We have some incubators that are having some interesting impact, and we thought we need training, because we have one of the areas that is generating nowadays a huge amount of employment is the polishing of metals. So we have, for example, all the Louis Vuitton belts are polished in Fundao. They come from France, they go there, they are polished, and they go back to France. We are just a little bit on the value chain. Hopefully we'll get a higher share in the future, but at this stage we are there. But at the same time, we need highly skilled people to do that, and we need training. So we thought, let's reuse one of the old factories that we have that is closed for 20 years, and let's try to make that space as a training space for others to come. So we did one of the innovations that was done in Fundao was not only the role of the municipality, it was also the way of doing business. It's a huge headache for the law office of the municipality, because the mayor always comes with a crazy idea of, we're going to support a private investment, I'm going to rent a space, I'm going to put some money on the company through a renting of the space, and they're going to invest and they're going to create some jobs. But that, for the normal ways of doing in public administration in Portugal, and I'm sure you'll have the same problem in Italy, it's a huge problem. But the innovation in the model of collaboration with companies was also part of the things we had to do. So this was, for example, I'm now showing you a couple of examples. This is a very nice museum that we have in the center of Fundao. It used to be a mill, okay. And then they said, when we had these policies of huge real estate investments and huge construction investments, we said, we need a museum. So we built this. And this is a huge white elephant in the center of the city that is completely empty. It has no activity at all. And we decided, okay, this is a very fancy place. It's really beautiful, but it's useless. So let's do a co-work there. Let's put people working there. If they do not go there to see the paintings, or if they do not go there to see the fantastic cultural things that we have, let's make them work there. And let's try and test if it works. And actually, we have now 35 people working every day in a co-working space, in a place with 30,000 inhabitants. At the beginning, we thought co-working is perhaps something too new, and people will not understand it and will not need it and will not use it. But after all, it works. And then we had this, it used to be a market. We called it the praça, which is interesting because praça in Portugal is the same for square. But we called this the square. So the praça was the place where farmers and even cheesemakers would come to sell their products. And the praça was rebuilt with the community, and it's now a social and business incubator. So we have NGOs working there, and we also have business working there. And it's interesting because there are not normal businesses. But we would think that because we had this IT focus, we would only have guys doing apps and all that kind of fancy things. But it's not true. Actually, we have one person that is growing mushrooms. He did a very interesting concept of a box, and he sells the box. You put water on it, and mushrooms grow. We have another person that is doing soap. She gets local fragrances, and she does soap, local soap. And she has a sustainable business. We have another person, she was an unemployed person, and now she's doing very nice dresses with the traditional fabric. So that's the kind of business that we have there. At the same time, on the IT side, some companies started to appear. So we now have a company that is focused on creating mesh networks to connect villages that are far away and non-sustainable for big companies' business in terms of IT companies. And they put broadband on far villages through mesh networks, through Wi-Fi. And they've managed to connect territories that were not connected. And that's also a company that's working there. So we also have a Fab Lab. And one of the lessons learned is do not start the Fab Lab by the Fab Lab guidelines. We spent lots of money in building a Fab Lab, and some of the materials are totally useless. But we bought them because they were on the guidelines. So when you buy a Fab Lab, please make sure that people that are building the Fab Lab know what they're doing, and at least they have some experience in working with Fab Labs. That's a very important lesson learned for us. But it's interesting because this is some pieces that an artisan used to do manually, and he now uses the CNC of the Fab Lab to build them. And another thing is the lady that sells the soaps, she goes on the Fab Lab, which is next door, and she built a very fancy housing for the soap that is totally built in the Fab Lab. So they're networking and doing things. And then we said, this is all very interesting, but unless we have a very good community, it's not going to work. And the community in a place like Fundao is not only internally. It's people like perhaps me that are not there, they are not living there, but they love the place. They have a strong sense of identity, and they're willing to collaborate, they're willing to give ideas, they're willing to criticize, they're willing even to put business on the place. So we started doing some events, and this Pecha Kucha was one of the initial ones, where we would scan for people that were from the city that were living abroad, and we would invite them to come and give ideas. And it's actually interesting, because some of them thought, it's very interesting that these things are happening here, because we wouldn't thought that this place had an opportunity. So nowadays, and it's been very interesting until now, let me just give you an example of another result. I'm not sure if it's taking too long, but no one is sleeping. I'll take 5 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes more. One of the things one of the results that we had, and it was a very interesting one, we used to have, you saw the Praça, the old square, the old market, but then we had a huge building. It was called the multi-usage building that was supposed to be a market, which does not make sense in the center of Portugal, in a place with sun every day almost, that you create a closed place for a market. That was on the open air market, they wanted to close it. So we reused the space, and it now has 120 IT engineers, because Altran, which is a multinational company, decided to invest there. And they've invested 30 million euros, and in a term of 5 years, and they are now hiring 120 engineers that are working in IT business in the city of Fundao, which was something that you would not expect some years ago. So the idea there was, we have the space, but you do not only need space, you need services for your people. So all the people that come from abroad to work in that place, they have, for sure, that's assured by the municipality, they have proper housing, and they have proper services for their kids, and they have the quality of life that we can give them for free as well. So the idea is exactly this. You should think of new ways of selling your territory and finding your strong points. Nowadays, this is a national program in Portugal. I'm just going to show you how we're tackling it. There's these urban development plans that are going to be funded by European funds and at the national level. And they asked us for 3 domains: mobility, urban regeneration, and social innovation. And the way we went there, we said, okay, mobility, it's very interesting. The objective is very square, to reduce CO2. And we said, let's focus on behavior change. We can invest whatever we want, but if people are not changing their behaviors, you're not doing anything. So instead of investing in very fancy new buses or bus lines in a place where you have no traffic, let's really focus on behavior change. Another thing was, let's do intermunicipal synergies, because we have territories next to us that could bring people, or either our people could work there in a more sustainable way. It's nowadays more expensive to work in a 30 kilometers distance in the center of Portugal, to commute a 30 kilometers distance in the center of Portugal, that it is in Lisbon. Basically because we do not have public transportation offer. But we also cannot afford normal public transportation. So perhaps car sharing, new ways of commuting should be discussed in that territory for them to be sustainable. Also, urban regeneration is going to be focused on both entrepreneurship and PPPs. PPPs is very simple. The people that are coming to work for the companies, they need places. Those places are rented. But we have not too many places, or not all the places that we want. So if a private investor is willing to rebuild a building, there's the possibility that you get a contract for that building to be rented to the municipality to support the ones that are coming. And entrepreneurship is basically, the idea is to use the center of the of Fundao as a networked incubator. So instead of just an incubator in a space, we want the incubator to be everywhere. And in terms of social innovation, we did a condominium for elderly people, so that people go there and live there, and they have a very interesting set of services that are ensured by local NGOs or by local micro companies that ensure that they can have quality of life while living alone but living together in a community. So, lessons learned. Critical mass is a myth. Let me show you. I've worked in Cali, has 2 million inhabitants. I've worked in Gran Concepcion, it has 1 million. Now I'm working in Fundao, which is this very small thing. And some of the results are better in Fundao than the others. So creating communities is key. Second one is start with something. Do not expect to have everything ready, because you'll never be ready. Start doing something. Public administration needs to trust you, which is also be prepared for their timings. And there are many timings in public administration. You have the policies, the political timing, the policy timing. You have that huge problem that normally happens, which is they're normally too slow when you go, and I was discussing that with Jesse. It's actually his sentence, I'm stealing it. They're normally too slow when you want to go fast. And they are too fast when you think things should go slower. And that's the timing adjustment. And another thing is that people do not understand innovative. It's a new language. We come with new concepts. We come with new ideas. Innovative is like a global community that is growing everywhere. We understand what a co-work is, what a fab lab is, what a living lab is. But people on the street, you should be working for them. You should be working with them. You need to communicate a lot, because they need to understand what you're doing, and they need to align with what you're doing, or you should align with them. Another thing is that plans should not be blockers. So strive for openness and unexpected surprises. Do not plan and say, this is out of the plan, so we cannot do that. Let things happen, right? And the role of the municipality is actually to facilitate and promote collaboration in this case. And we thought that there's much more value added if the municipality works like that than if the municipality actually comes and buys or does everything, okay? And context is an opportunity, and this is a very important one. Your place, your resources, and it's your life. And it's the place where you live. It's the resources that you see. It's the way you see them that can create a huge opportunity for you to create a different environment, a different way of life, but something that others can see as a role model, and that others can be willing to see, to buy, and that's an important remark even for businesses. I've seen companies in Africa dealing with problems in a totally different way that would solve problems in Europe, because they are so innovative and the way they're doing it is so different that we've never thought of. So instead of following the same path that everyone follows, that I'll do an application, that I'll do a big enormous company and a big enormous service that's going to solve the problems of the world, let's try to see what we have inside our places and what we have inside our villages and the way we do the same things as the others in a different way, and try to spot the opportunities that we have there and try to spot where we can really create more value and have a better life. So that's the last slide. Thank you.
Jan, thank you so much for your nice contributions. And it seems that there is a problem of perceiving future in your intervention. The way of perceiving problems, constructing a museum that is useful, thinking about infrastructures that could not be really used by citizens. I'll combine the long-term perspectives with the short-term perspectives from a political point of view and the management of participation. I think it's a crucial problem. Can you say something about that?
I totally agree. Well, I don't know how it works in Italy, but in Portugal, politicians work to win elections. And when you work to win elections, sometimes you're doing things not because they're right, not because you need them, but because you feel that people need them. So some of those investments, they were investments that came into in a context. And the context was, we have a new and striving local government. We had a sleepy government for so many years, and we need to change. And we were living perhaps the times of the starting of this millennium, and we had no crisis, right? So we had no lack of money. Actually, Portugal was in the European Union. We had very easy credit access, so it was very easy to build and to construct. And it's true, actually it is true, that some of the investments were not sustainable and they were not thought of. Actually, I would say that it happens frequently that when a politician is not able to in a certain way, to have a rational idea or a rational support for what he's doing, he says it's a political option. That's the way we do it in Portugal, at least. I'm just sharing my experience. Yes, it is true that we need better planning. Yes, it is true that we need better sustainability plans when we build something. It is also true that we need more participation. And that relates a lot with the role of urban planners. In my place, urban planners are closed in a space and they take decisions. They take decisions in the place of people. They think what people should think. And when people are against them, they say that people are not ready for their changes. So it's not a matter of creating spaces, systems, services, or even policies for participation. At least until some time ago, it was a matter of finding excuses to replace participation. And that's something that we need to try to tackle. I'm not saying that all public decisions should be made in a participatory way, or that people is always true. If we talk about innovation, Ford used to say that if I had asked people what they wanted, we would have faster horses and not a car. It is true that sometimes you need to disrupt, but it is also true that not all disruptions work. And it's the balance between new things and innovative things, and also understanding the knowledge of the context, which is very useful and comes from the people, that you have the better decisions. That's at least my view. Thank you. Okay.
Jesse Marsh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to speak here. I'm going to present a book, which is also available online, that was that I edited and mostly wrote, I guess, that was done in a collaboration between ANOL, which is the European Network of Living Labs, and the World Bank, which Jean was talking about a little bit. But I'll present a little bit about the book, but mostly about the how and the why about this book, because I think that's what's relevant to the topic of this morning. Jean mentioned living labs. What is a living lab? A living lab, well, this is sort of a definition, but it's very easy to show these days pictures like this, or pictures like that, people sitting around a table and they're all very informal and we're all working together, and the citizen is king, and we are open to innovation, and we are all encouraging participation, and we're getting all of the stakeholders around the table, and so on and so forth. But in the end, if you really open up to a process of co-design, the co-part is very difficult for all of us. We are trained as engineers to go in and fix it. We are trained as planners, and there's the city, I'll go in and fix it. Or we're trained as politicians, and this is my territory, and I'll go in and fix it. We are outside the system, we are experts, and we fix other people's things. Co-creation means you totally turn that upside down. It means the first thing is that you are inside the system. You have to consider yourself inside the system that you are talking about. You're a part of it as much as anybody else. And then you realize that you are not really an expert. And if you think about it, the people who are experts like you over the last 20 or 30 years have made some terrifying errors, and probably the problems you're trying to fix are the ones that experts like you created in the first place. So it means you have to relinquish your expertise, meaning that you have your own baggage of knowledge, you have your contribution you can bring to the group, but the contribution you can bring to the group needs to be humbly set in the same exact level as the person sitting next to you who may not have a university degree, okay? That's co-design. When everybody opens up to the expertise and the resources that other people bring to a table. And that's what a living lab is. And the difficult part is, in fact, that it's very easy to say, it's very easy to give the impression you're doing it, but to actually do it is a total revolution for most organizations, for most public institutions, for most companies, for most universities, for most just about anything. So as this living lab movement started, ANOL decided to build a network to sort of mutually reinforce the approaches. And within ANOL, there are a lot of living labs. All of this started in 2006. And we have yearly waves of new people joining us. And they join the network by sort of telling how do they co-create. And you can have companies who lead the thing, or you can have citizen groups who lead the thing, or you can have ex-farmers and ex-leader projects that lead the thing. Totally different. If anybody looks at what's the definition of the living lab, there's no definition. It's people doing things in a similar way and sharing and learning from that experience and networking to reinforce the believability of what they do. The believability in front of the experts, not in front of people, because people are much smarter than you think. So this is a view of, the E stands for European because that's how it got started, and this is sort of the intensity of participation in different countries. And this is off topic, but I think for those of you who live in Sicily, it's useful to know there is a living lab in Sicily since 2007 that has a lot of planners, urban planners in it. There's a lot of urban planning thinking about it because we started this idea of territorial innovation, which is a lot of sort of what John was talking about, innovation linked to the specific features of a territory. But that's just a little self-promotional parenthesis. And ANOL over the last 4 or 5 years has grown a lot throughout the world. So it is a big network, and it is beginning to, but though the concept of living lab is often quite misunderstood. Now, the World Bank, you say, what about the World Bank? Most of you probably think of the World Bank as being somehow associated with the Troika or something like that, and doing terrible things and funding things and lots of corruption and so on and so forth, and it is. But there are also a group of people doing kind of interesting things, because if you've ever heard about an innovation hub in Nairobi, or if you've ever heard about the open data policy in Moldova, or open data in Kenya, if you've ever heard about certain things happening in Maputo or Medellin, turning from the second mafia capital in the world after Palermo into the innovation hub of Latin America, a lot of that is their fault. And they became increasingly interested in the Living Lab movement because they saw a sort of systematic methodological thing. They were following a lot of formulas like open data hackathons and things like that that weren't entirely working. And they got the feeling that some kind of systematic view of this co-design approach would help them. And so we started this collaboration, signed a memorandum of understanding in, I can't remember when, I think maybe it's on the next slide. No, it's not. A couple of years ago. And the first, we decided together that the first thing we should do was a book to try and put on paper or somehow formalize the methodology of living labs and how anal, that would be useful both to the living labs and anal as well as the World Bank in promoting this method, explaining it to people when you go into a situation and want to begin to work in this way. That's the link. It's not a very easy to remember one. Probably if you Google the title, it's easier. It's freely downloadable, and anybody who wants to, well, the translation's another question. But anyway, it's an open source thing. We did print some physical copies. This is 2012 was the Memorandum of Understanding. Okay, so we talked about this book, and we talked about the method, and so on and so forth. And in the end, we figured out what is the most important thing we could do. And in the end, the decision was to talk to the mayor. Okay? Now, in the last couple of days, I've heard, I think, practically no one speak from within the public administration. I think all of us are outside, except one guy I know down there, are outside of the public administration looking at it. And there are different ways that people, a couple of classes of ways of looking at the public administration. There's the sort of, I've got the technology for you and I'm going to make you more efficient and I'm going to save you lots of money approach. And that generally comes from technology-driven logic. There's the approach, I'm going to ignore you. And I'm going to do my social innovation in the backyard, and I'm going to pretend you don't even exist. And that's going to be nice and fun, but there are sort of limits to the kind of impact you're going to get. But anyway, it's fun to do that, and you don't have to deal with a certain reality, which some of us, for some bizarre reason, are interested in. And then the third category is sort of the Jean category, which is you find a mayor who you can deal with, and you find a hero, a champion in the public administration, and they take care of pushing the administration in a certain direction. And then you get to sort of do, they sign the documents, and you sort of get to do what you think you need to do. But none of that is enough, and none of that is going to work. The question of the lack of innovation in the public administration is probably the biggest question we face as a society today, and we just cannot ignore it. We cannot continue to pretend that until something radical begins to happen within public administrations, we are going to continue on the disaster course that we are currently on. So, the idea of this book was to sort of make some little cracks in the minds of a mayor. We are, maybe it was Ignazio said it, we are actually a community. Maybe a lot of us are here, it's a Saturday morning, maybe a lot of us are here because we're paid, because it's our job and we do this kind of thing. But actually, as innovators, as people who want to do this thing, we are a community. And the only approach I think that we can have towards the public administration as a community is to try to bring them into our community. We need to open up to stop being planners and engineers and architects and designers and whatever. But we also need to have the mayor stop being a mayor for a moment. And we need to bring the public administration to the same table as us in the same way that we want to sit at the same table with the guy who sells fish at the market next door. The main entry point to mayors, as we have interpreted, is to turn things upside down. Mayors are being told, okay, we're cutting resources, blah, 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 and the line you hear, particularly from the technology push people, is you've got to do more with less. But our message is, tell the mayor, what you have to do is less with more. Do less. Try to control less. Let go. Try to open up. Opening up is, you can say open, but opening up is big stuff. Lose control. Tell that. Do less with more. You have more resources in your territory, and that was one of the main points of John's talk, than you imagine. You have all sorts of stuff happening on your territory. Things like the census of social innovation that was done in Milan are good evidence of all kinds of stuff that mayors and anybody in the public administration has no idea about, because they can't even use Facebook when they're in the office. Everybody thinks that's an obvious thing. But how are they going to know what's going on in the world out there? So it's an invitation to the mayor to join us. It's an invitation to anybody working in the public service to join this community, to join this way of doing. And it's a hell of a lot easier than you think. All you have to do is take the jump. We compare it to riding a bicycle. It's like you're a kid, and it seems impossible, and you wander around a little bit. But if you take the jump, and I think we all remember that feeling of, look, I can do it, and it's a lot easier than you thought. And once you've done it once, then you're there for the rest of your life. This is the structure of the book, but basically just to say, you probably can't read it anyway. I'll get back to this. And this is just to show it's a very nice, user-friendly guidebook. They know how to do these things. It's full of, the gray pages are case studies, and I'll show you the list. And then at the end, there's a sort of starter pack, a little guide to terms that people are going to tell you about, like Internet of Things, and try to get you confused. This is sort of the structure of the chapters. And the first chapter, which is what John was saying in his conclusions, is getting started. Just start. Just start to do it. Just open up. And how do you do that? I'll just go through the first chapter because I think it's the essential thing. The first thing to do is you can help the people in your city do a census, look around, find out what resources are on the territory that they have no idea that exist. It's a much harder thing. Usually there are things like a digital innovation community in your city. It's not easy to get them to want to go and talk to the mayor or enter even into City Hall, but that's part of the job. The first thing is just to give evidence of the fact that the resources in the territory, like what Jean was saying, are much more than you think, that there is a lot of stuff out there that that are behind the wall of the official people who officially represent the interest in your community. The second point is build trust. That's when the mayor has to open up and speak the language that the innovation community wants to hear the mayor speaking. And it's not very difficult. You just have to be curious and find out what kind of events do they organize. Do they organize seminars and conferences that start with the president of the region giving a welcome speech? No. They organize bar camps. Throw a bar camp. Speak the language. Speak the methodological language. It's not very difficult, and it doesn't cost anything. Test collaboration. Find something almost marginal. Ask people around. Find a little thing that you can try and test a new method of working with people, if you found some innovators, ask them how they think it should be handled and let them do it. Again, these things don't cost anything, and the main problem is to convince the mayor just to let it happen. Rethink technology. I think Francesco is going to talk about frugal government. Technology, well, that's a whole other discourse, but rethink technology as compared to what the Cisco salesman just told you. Rethink about what you've got in your pocket. You've got lots of sensors in your pocket. You don't need to go out and pay money for them. And finally, spot the champions. There are social champions in your city that you need to make an alliance with. And if the mayor starts doing this kind of stuff before making any press conferences or anything like that, then you can get started. And the rest is just follow-up. But the main thing, and I think the main message, is what we, because we are not the public administration, I believe, have to do is just to work with people, find a little interstitial crack in the public administration where you can get this process started and then work from there. These are the case studies, and again, they're case studies from places you would expect to find them, like Helsinki or Barcelona and stuff like that. But there are also case studies from Colombia, Matuto, Tandale, which is in Dar es Salaam. First day, a lot of people were saying that they didn't want to be in Palermo, they wanted to be in Silicon Valley. I don't want to hear any more of that. I think that's a total garbage. We should be starting from Palermo to see what kind of innovation can happen in here and do the kind of things that they're doing in Maputo, okay? The starter pack, again, that's mainly to demystify things. So the key messages out of this is that where are some of the main misunderstandings between what we are trying to do and their world? The first misunderstanding is about technology. Technology does not have to be expensive. Technology, you cannot just buy. You cannot buy technology. Technology is a term that has an anthropological meaning as much as a meaning of things. You can buy an iPod, but you're not buying the technology until you start to use it, okay? So even if somebody's talked you into putting 2 billion euro in your pawn metro to buy this or that, you haven't gotten anywhere. You haven't started anywhere. You can't start from the technology, okay? We need it. We need those people. But those people who are coming into the mayor and say, we're going to save you $4 billion a year, are the people who are confusing the discourse and making our lives about as difficult as possible. And I think sooner or later we have to face the fact that when these people speak at conferences like this, they are making problems. They are making the situation worse because they are giving people the illusion that all you have to do is spend a lot of money, install a lot of technology, and that's going to solve a problem. And it's that logic which makes it impossible to get started doing things for free, okay? So I would say just to sum up, I think I've been talking more about your fourth question than anything else. Institutional innovation has to become social innovation. The only thing we can do is to contaminate our institutions. Opening up is not a decision the mayor makes. It's something that happens gradually through experimentation. Experimentation is a word that is so foreign to the public administration, but that's what we need to start doing together. We need to start light, we need to start low risk, but just the logic of experimentation, the logic of exploration, the logic of discovery is what we need to do. And if we don't do that, I think we're in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can leave me alone?
I've been participating, no, at all. I've been participating in a lot of living labs over the last years, and I was always been wondering if the knowledge coming up from the living labs is the right knowledge to solve the problem. If the problem, I think that a problem is the representation of knowledge of problems on a wide base, and people participating in a living lab are only a strongly motivated elite, and which kind of knowledge they bring within the living labs. I think it's a very important issue in order to push mayors, to push the political level to promote innovation, because it seems that they could prefer a wider representation like that in a city council, for example, or in a think tank that is nominated by a mayor, for example. So the question of knowledge, I think, and representation of knowledge is a crucial question for the effectiveness of this kind of instruments. Is it a technical point or is it a political point?
I'm not sure we share the same definition of a living lab. You use the word elite. A living lab is a method more than a box, okay? And I think the living lab, the whole core, the concept of a living lab is the co-construction of knowledge, okay? Because knowledge is contextual. And the idea of a living lab is to bring the context together, the elements of that context together. So on day one, Artur Serra was talking about the city as a lab. An ideal situation in the context of this conference is that the city become a laboratory. And the first thing I ask when people want to begin a process like this is, who's missing around the table? Okay? Because the question is, and it makes people reflect on what competences do we need. And it's not a question so much of roles, it's a question of viewpoints. Okay, if you're in the city council, you can be valuable to us because you understand how the city council works, not because you were elected or you have a name, or maybe you understand how to get elected. You have a certain kind of knowledge that we don't have. But the approach is that you bring people together not because of necessarily their disciplinary specificity or their role in some kind of model of governance. You bring them together because you need a different viewpoint on the same reality, because that's the way you construct knowledge. So I would say it's a knowledge construction method. I would enjoy writing a research proposal about how you could build a semantic framework on top of that and interlink that between different communities and learn from it. But in a sort of manual way, that's what Enel tries to do as a network, to experiment that approach. And it's not either a question of bottom up or top down, because there is no bottom and there is no top. We're all in this together. If anything, it's inside out and outside in. It's a question about what systems are you defining, what systems are you inside, and what systems are you outside of? And are we representing that system? Because, like you were suggesting quite rightly, the way I represent that system is the way the knowledge that system generates is going to be defined, and it's going to be the limits of that knowledge. And okay, so what is important is to try and make sure that the relevance of that knowledge is appropriate to the question at hand. Solve our problems. There are different problems at different scales and pieces of problems. You can never solve, the way to solve wicked problems is to start with little things. And then there's a sort of, I guess if there's any assumption behind this, it's a sort of reconstructivist dynamic, that if little things work, then they connect by themselves. But there's this sort of midterm view of life, which I think is one of the main problems we have in planning. We're used to looking ahead at 10 years and saying to the politicians they're stupid because they're only looking 4 years. Whereas what we need to do is to think 50 years and then tomorrow, okay? So the scope of problems, we need to understand the systemic dynamics in a very long-term forecasting view to understand what to do tomorrow, because then you need action. The whole co-creation process, the whole concept of experimentation is that it's action. One of the main problems of the political process is that you separate decision-making from action, right? You first think and plan, and then you do. No, by doing, you are planning. I don't know whether that answers your question, but I hopefully got you confused.
You responded it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yvonne, JANSEN-DINGS. We miss a couple of speakers, so if you need some minutes else in your presentation, you can take it. Okay?
Who has the up? Okay. I'm Yvonne Jansen. I'm from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and I work for an organization called Waag Society. I am a project manager there. I'm program developer for open data and smart city topics, and I'm currently the chair of Code for Europe, which I'll elaborate on in a few minutes. I have my laptop here because I can see my notes then. So a bit about Waag Society. As I said, we're a knowledge institute. We're a non-for-profit, and we're about 50 people big. And we are very much all about co-creation. It was mentioned previously. We are designers, we are programmers, coders, we are builders, we are makers. And we always start with the prototype, the idea, and redefining the question. And our process has 3 phases. So any project that we do, we always start within, I don't really know if you can read it, but the first section is always form. And that's about just experimenting, about sitting around the table with people that are interested in a subject and going back to what the relevance of the question that you are trying to ask is, and if it's the right question to begin. And in this phase, we work a lot with artists. In the second phase, the context phase, we then try to implement the things that we found. So we try to find a bigger podium, a bigger place to bring the experiment to the next level. And then if that works out, then we go into the incubation phase. And that's usually when things go separate from our non-profit entity and could perhaps become a business of its own. So to give examples of this, the first one you see here, this is a subject we are currently very much exploring, and it's our life sciences topic. We call it our biohack, a biohack academy, for instance. And you see here a couple of examples of the things that we try to where we are trying to redefine the question. So life sciences is a type of technology that is currently not very much utilized by the general public. It's all captured in, it's all caught in these labs that have very high, of course, standards and rules, and it becomes very invisible to the public. For you in general, I don't know how you cannot make your own medicine, for instance, and these are the things that we are trying to explore. So, just to clarify, the picture below is not real. It's photoshopped. But one of the things we're doing, for instance, is we just entered a project where we're trying to see whether or not we can somehow have people create their own antibiotics. There are a lot of antibiotics out there that are not being produced anymore because they are not for the general market, and you can create actually antibiotics very custom to the person. And so just to explore, is that a path that we would want to venture into? Is that feasible? Well, how would that look like? And do that in co-creation. So with people that have an interest and a stake into a question like this. Another example is of more the context part of what we do is a teacher maker camp. So here we've already sort of explored the question, and the question we're trying to answer is how can we change education and make it more flexible and utilize current technologies in the educational system. And the Teacher Maker Camp is a setting where teachers can come in and actually experiment themselves. So we have a whole range of programs for education. We have Fab School Kids. Now, the Fab Lab has been mentioned a couple of times. For those of you that haven't been to the Fab Lab, there's one here in Palermo. So, you know, you should do this on Monday immediately if it's open then. So a place where you can just start creating anything. And we do this a lot with kids already. So kids come in and they build their own marble sculptures and T-shirts with LED lights and anything that you can possibly think of making. And then we do this also with teachers, so that they don't just get a set of papers for us, so this is how you implement this in your classroom. No, that they experience how to do that themselves. So there's a whole week and they just build their own flying birds, as you can see. And they experience the whole maker, the whole ideas behind the maker movement, and get a better sense of how they then can implement it in their own classroom as well. And then one successful incubation example is the Fairphone. I don't know how many you know about Fairphone. Yeah, okay. Well, Fairphone, it is a fair trade mobile phone. It's fully open source, but also the technology, the hardware is fully open. And it really goes into trying to make the whole phone fair. A lot of materials in a phone come from conflict mines and conflict materials. So it's about documenting the entire process, making accountability, making it accessible for the public to understand how the whole phone is put together, but also make it able for them to change it. And we've currently sold a second batch of 60,000 phones. So, concluding about the Waag Society, I think this is very much at the core of where we stand for. If you cannot open it, you do not own it. It is about re-evaluating technology, making everything we do, we open up, and we encourage that for others as well. And we see it as opening up the technology for democratization, as well as democratizing the access to technology. So making sure that everybody can participate, can understand, can create, become a maker, and in that sense, start becoming an influencer as well. From that context, I want to present two initiatives that I'm currently working on. One is Code for Europe, and one is the Smart Citizen Lab. And both are very accessible formats, I think. If you want to, we've been talking about how can you work with the government, how can government go into this co-creation process, how they can they set up living lab structures. And these are, I think, two very accessible formats for that. So the first is Code for Europe. And a bit of background here, I think it is relevant to say that for about 5 years or so, it was in your publication as well, the path that the municipality in Amsterdam has taken. It started very low-key. It started with one champion within the municipality who dared to say to her boss that we were going to do apps for Amsterdam. And it was Waag Society and another organization in the city, a more hacker community. And we just started doing it. And by doing it, we just built a little website where the first data sets were released for the competition. And it was just knocking on doors, just calling people, do you have something? Just send me an Excel file, I'll put it online. And for the first competition, you had 20 data sets. And it started sort of growing from there. So you build a bit of momentum, people can get to sort of understand what it's about, they get to meet some interesting hackers, some interesting designers, see what interesting applications come out of it, and the ball starts rolling from there. And this is a key component, I think, for us to be able to implement the Code for Europe ideas, because it is built on this this willingness of the municipality growing to open up more data and to utilize that data to create services, and about the hacker and designer community in a city coming more together and really being engaged with civic technology and wanting to use that to change the city for the better. Currently, there are several Code for initiatives in Europe. We have, of course, Code for the Netherlands, there's Code for Poland, Code for Ireland. In Finland, it's called 6ICA, and you have Code for Germany. And it came from Code for Europe, or actually, it's just Code for, it's a Code for move, you can pretty much say. And the ideas came from America, Code for America. They have been going for, I think, 7 years strong right now. And basically what you do is you take somebody from the civic tech community that usually is probably already created a few applications for the city, that has participated in hackathons, that is pushing you to open up more data. And you put them in a nine-month program, a year program with a department within the municipality, very low key, to start creating stuff. And that's pretty much it. So your cost is the cost for one coder for a year. And what happens when you start this process is first you start to see that there are a lot of challenges that people within the municipality want to change. So like there's no problem finding things that people want to work on. They come from all over the city. So it's, you know, you can only work on one or two. So that's always the challenge, picking the best one. The challenges usually are formulated in a policy perspective. So they are, we need to make air quality better in the city, which is a totally different question than a service question, like coming from a citizen. The citizen wants to know, how is the air quality in the school of my kid, near the school of my kid? That's a question from a citizen. And it's helping, so in this process, we help them turn their policy questions towards service questions. And then we start creating simple solutions for that and doing it in a very agile way. And the whole purpose of the program is to get the people within the department that are working with the fellow, to get them to see this way of working, this easy, simple prototyping way of working where you create something in 2 weeks' time and then you test it with people within the city in that area that you've targeted where the question is, and you start iterating, just new versions, maybe add some stuff, remove some stuff, go into a different direction. So it's a very practical process. It's very hands-on, but at the same time, it's also it's actually all about changing the perspective of government on the way you work with ICT. A few examples of this. I really like an example from America, where they have to deal with churn. So what you see here is, to explain this, CalFresh is a program in California where you can apply for sort of food stamps. It's a benefit program. If you're below a certain income, you can get a discount at the supermarket. And the churn rate is the people dropping out of the system. So you have to reapply, I think, every 2 months or something. And people just dropped out, like they dropped out for a couple of months and then they reapplied again. So probably you can conclude that they don't really have an increased income at that time. They just forgot to reapply. And it's a really heartbreaking problem, because you can imagine standing in a supermarket with your children, swiping your CallFresh card, and then nothing happens and you can't pay your groceries. So it's a really urgent problem. And one of the Code 4 fellows came into the municipality, and instead of going into the whole back-end system that is in place for CallFresh, and it's a huge ICT system, he decided to create a tiny application, a text messaging system that connects to the big ICT system in the background, and just sends people a text message when they are about to drop out. And you can maintain your application if you just text back. And then, of course, you do have to go into the whole process of reapplying again. But then at least you're safe for the foreseeable time, and you can go to the supermarket tomorrow. And this is Code for America is tackling this on currently on a whole California level, because they're not only helping the people dropping out, but they are also promoting the whole system for people that are eligible, because 40% of the people that are eligible are not in the system. So, and I think I was talking to somebody from Code for America beginning of this year, and she was saying we need to really focus on these services that meet the needs of the people that need it the most. Because we tend to always go into the services for people that already are, you know, that already are more on the top. But if you have a low income and you can apply for such a program and you just don't know about it, or the documentation is too hard or something, this is the person that really needs a really easy government service to be able to apply. And they built it. So it's getcoalfresh.org, and you can apply there for the system. But it's a process. It's an entire process. And I think a major point that I want to make in this regard is the fact that there's a gap of knowledge within current governments. And when it comes to the roads and the sewers, this knowledge gap isn't there. Huh? I think it's historic. From legislation to services, if you want to build a road, the process within the municipality is in place. They work with outside contractors, but the knowledge about the road is within the municipality. They know when a contractor is selling them BS. Huh? They know when it's not right. So the government is able to can reflect on what is happening. We do not see the same for ICT services, and we hear these stories all over Europe. I mean, there was just a little documentary on the Dutch TV about social services in the Netherlands having an 800 million euro project gone totally wrong. So, and it has to do with these things. There are no coders, no service design thinkers, no UX designers, no data scientists, or too little in municipality currently. And you have to procure, you cannot build everything yourself, but you have to be able to build some stuff yourself, and you have to be able to be the checks and balances towards the outside procurers. And really, there are major benefits to get here. I mean, I was talking to colleagues in Finland, and they were saying that one of the major benefits they saw for the code fellows, they currently have 6 code fellows from previous years that they hired, so they're now part of the municipality, and they have 3 new code fellows this year. And they say we also send them to procurement meetings. So when somebody's going to, get some app built, and some ICT vendor is going to say, well, it costs 200,000 euros. Just by the code fellow being in the meeting, the price goes down 20%. So this is immediate benefit from the code fellow. So this person will pay itself back immediately. But of course, it's not as simple as that, because it's not only bringing the person in, it's about changing the process. But I think bringing the person in is changing the process. So start with that first. Let me see. So in the Netherlands, we were lucky enough to experiment within a European project with the Code Fellows for 2 years in Amsterdam. And this year, I officially launched Code for NL, and we have fellows in 2 cities, the city of Amsterdam and the city of Eindhoven. And to give a few examples of the things we're working on in Amsterdam, the fellows in the last year worked on sharing of public places. So this is a neighborhood in Amsterdam where there are a lot of community spaces available, and people just don't utilize them enough, and they don't know when they can use them for free, and they don't know, or if they have a commercial idea, I'm giving yoga lessons, they don't know how much they should or have to pay. So just building a simple application that has an agenda function that enables the sharing of the spaces and people to give insight into the cost. But I think key in the process was that the whole application was transferred to the community center there, and they held a series of workshops where they taught people within the community itself to maintain the application. So now it's fully operational and maintained by the community center itself. Another application that we are now working on in Amsterdam is on the coaches. So Amsterdam is about the same size as Palermo, and okay, we don't have that much traffic as you have here, but it's still pretty heavy, and also very small streets, so touring cars have a very hard time park. They cause a lot of inconvenience for citizens, and we are now just seeing how we can solve this, looking at should we do something with sensors, should be an application for the coach drivers, should we try to get some data from the coach organization. So we're currently just exploring the entire field and doing that in a co-creation method. So I'm not the expert, I don't know anything about coaches, the fellow doesn't know anything about coaches, just going out, standing in the coach parking space, talking to the person that drives the coach. What is his problem? How is he connected? What does he do to find out where there's a parking space? So and then start building something and see if it works. And I wanted to quickly tap on a few key elements from the ideas behind the Code for Movement. So I think very much key is that you need to design service that fits the needs of citizens. And in government, we do tend to formulate everything from a policy perspective. And that's natural because that's your field of expertise. And it's talking to designers and peers to really turn your question into a service question and then solving that service, creating that service. And I think some of these have also already been tapped on by others as well. I think knowing what not to do is also a key element. Making sure you create and generate enough data for people to actually know what steps to take and to make what's said here, to make the decision making as effective as possible. And this was also mentioned, but choosing the right technology for the job. Not everything needs to be a 800 million euro system. Some things can be solved by one fellow working for you for a year, and probably more than one thing. So something can be solved with something as easy as a cheap text messaging system, for which there's plenty of open source solutions already out there. And working towards results. Then the Smart Citizen Lab, which is another project we're doing in Amsterdam. I have a little movie clip here. Will it work? Oh, I have to be patient. Ah, yes. Okay. The Smart Citizen Lab is I had actually a little lab on this on Thursday here at the campus, and it's about empowering citizens to take action in their own lives. It's through technology, and what you see here is a movie clip of the first lab we did 2 years ago. We experimented with the Smart Citizen kit from Fab Lab Barcelona. It is a sensor kit with a couple of sensors in it. And we asked people to write a motivation why they would want a kit from us, and through the local newspaper. It's a very low-key way to start such an experiment. A lot of people applied, and we gave them a kit, and then we had a 10-week program with them, doing measurements with the kit, finding out measurements about temperature, about humidity, about air pollution. And we invited people from the municipality to participate in the discussion. So together we talked about what are the results that come out of this kit, what type of data do you get out of it, what can you deduct from that, how does that relate to official data, and just seeing, this is I think very much redefining the question, so seeing what comes out of such an experiment and putting the citizen in a more powerful position when talking to government. You give them a way to say, hey, you say the official measurement is this, but I constantly keep measuring this here. So what is happening? So you can discuss, are you going to do an official measurement on this specific location then, when there's such a different reading here? Or is there something happening in this place that can influence it? So you become more empowered to be in dialogue with the government. This is the kit you see here. It's a little board. It's sold by Fab Lab Barcelona. They created it through a Kickstarter campaign. But you can also build it yourself. It has some low-cost sensors in there. But yeah, you can also easily buy it. The only thing is that the whole thing with sensors currently is that the quality is always an issue. And we see a huge improvement in there in the field of electronics. So good electronics are becoming very cheap in a very fast way. So this really helps this movement along, because a lot of it is based on just putting some sensors together and start measuring. And the better the quality the sensor, of course, the better the readings you get and the more you are able to go into a dialogue. So these were the sensors that were actually measured during the first version of the Smart Citizen Lab. But the Smart Citizen Kit is currently all over the world. So this is smartcitizen.me, and you can see all active kits throughout the world and what they are currently measuring. And it's a very beautiful interface as well. I think this says something about the power of visualization. Let me see if I can go further. So to go into the field of electronics, I think one of the things we saw now in the second version of the Smart Citizen Lab that we did is that we wanted to make more tailored versions of the sensors. So you say the people that now are participating, they don't know anything about sensors. These are not electronic specialists. These are people like everybody here that is currently here that have an interest in their own environment. So they have a personal question that they want answered about their environment, so they come to this lab, and we help them. So what we do is we do this in our Fab Lab, because that's the place where we can really experiment with the sensors. And we first help them explore the question. We first help them see, okay, what is exactly that you want to know? And then we help them about, okay, what type of sensors would then be potentially interesting for this question that you have. So for instance, we have one team currently that wanted to know how much energy you could generate with a tiny windmill. So they are building this tiny windmill, they have connected some sensors to it, and they have a working prototype. And there's another team, of course, I mean this is a major issue in every city, that wants to know about the air quality. And during this process, you know, we are helping them get the sensors, we are helping them connect the sensors, create a little code for it. During this process, we are turning somebody that doesn't know anything about electronics and anything about code into a knowledgeable citizen that then understands that technology is not that hard, that you can appropriate it, that you are able to make it your own and interpret the information that comes from it to make them to be informed and to be able to be the smart citizen, the smart city that we are hoping that everybody can and will be. So we are putting them in a more equal position towards government to be able to create a dialogue and to really help the co-creation process take place. And during the lab that I held here, I think a very interesting project that came forward was the water quality from the tap in Palermo. And we sort of discussed what would be a good structure to tackle that. We saw that actually with a probably very low cost way, you could already start measuring the water quality of the tap, start communicating about the results, and start, get a community going of people that have an interest in this information and that want to be actively involved in changing the water quality as it happens. So if anybody here is interested in setting up this project, I know who to connect you to in the audience, so I thought this was really a great idea and it should happen immediately. Okay. To round off, I wanted to go into a few key elements that I feel are important when it comes to a Smart Citizen Lab. So first, this was mentioned in previous presentation as well. It's about ownership of the place that you are. I mean, I don't have an interest in running a Smart Citizen Lab here in Palermo because I don't live here. I want to do something in Amsterdam. I want to do something in my neighborhood, and at the core of this type of innovation is the fact that you tap into the need of people, the intrinsic need to want to take responsibility. And this is what it means to be a smart citizen. And you see here the Wikipedia symbol and Creative Commons. I mean, in the end, it is about, I think, this is a really important concept, accessibility over ownership and contribution over power. It is not about I created this sensor board and now it's mine and I'm going to sell it to the world. No, it's about I create this sensor and I'm going to share it so that other people can build and improve upon it. And I'm contributing to a community of people that want to increase their knowledge and increase the accessibility to these types of innovations. I don't want to go into all of them, but I think, let me go to this one. I mentioned this before about appropriating technology. We do live in a world where technology is immersive, it is almost invisible, and we are subjected to it in a sense. And I think the Smart Citizen Lab in particular, and the Waag Society in general, is always fighting against this, where we want to make sure that people are able to appropriate the technology and make sure that they can use it to their own benefit. So you don't have to be only the consumer, but you can be, you can reclaim agency towards processes and algorithms that are currently shaping the world that we live in. This is of course key, helping each other. I mentioned this already a couple of times, redefining the question, and you wouldn't believe how important this step is. It's always, and people come to us with questions, but it's almost never the question that is really underlying there. So don't take a question at face value, always take an extra step to question the question. Being a designer, making sure that you are a designer in the process, and this is the co-creation design process that was already mentioned. Don't be afraid to start over. Part of the prototyping process, and I think a very important aspect when it comes to municipalities. As a municipality, it is very hard to be able to fail. And I think you shouldn't call it failing. I think agile is the way out of this, conundrum. It's not failing, it's iterating. And getting that into the mindset of the governments and of municipalities, that you just keep changing until you're at the place where you have a really excellent application. And then the last one, do not stop. And with that, I want to leave you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. I have a question for you.
Yes.
My question is about technological barrier.
Yeah.
I've been recently looking at statistical data on the technological barrier in Europe among different population, different regions. That they are impressive regarding the kind of people that have access to the internet, have a smartphone, or do not have a smartphone, or have a smartphone only to take pictures and to talk with others.
Yeah.
So do you perceive this as a problem, technological barrier, beyond problems of incoming, level of incoming of the families, so from an economic point of view, first of all. Secondly, you perceive the public sector as an instrument to overcome this technological barrier, and to which extent, or maybe the market, or maybe...
Yes. Well, I think this goes back to the fact that it is about appropriating technology, like I said. I think finances are hardly ever a barrier in this sense, just because technology is becoming increasingly cheap. The thing is that it's becoming also increasingly closed. So, I mean, it's very strange that the Fairphone is the only phone in the world currently that is your own, that you can open up, that you're not, if you unscrew it, then your warranty doesn't go away. So, it is about, how do you say? It is about being critical when it comes to implementing technology, and definitely on a government level. I mean, government is implementing huge technological structures on our behalf. And the choices that are made there, I think, will follow us throughout the ages. So the role of government there is to be the critical voice, that the voice that says it should be open, it should be accessible on every level, so that we are able to change it as the insights change, as our needs change, as the services that we want to generate change. You see technological advances in every area of the world. It's not only in the richest countries, and but it's only the questions that people are trying to answer that differ. So in the Netherlands, it's about how do I choose the top school for my kid, and in another country, it's what country it's more how do I find the best water well, for instance. So the question change. But the fact that people are appropriating the technology, creating their own solutions in an open and accessible way, that does not change. So in that sense, I hope this answers your question, that I think this is a movement that we need to support, that we create open and accessible technology structures, yeah, so that people are able to put their own ideas in there. Okay.
I give the floor to Francesco Molinari.
Grazie. I didn't do anything yet. Okay. Good afternoon. I think it's politically correct that I say good afternoon. And first of all, thanks for this invitation. A special thanks to the chair for the ordering of presentations, because speaking after so many and so interesting and inspiring presentations makes my life definitely happier. And this is also why I will refrain from making any comments. I have many, but they would go off topic on the presentations that I have listened to, and I will stick to my own, hoping to contribute to perhaps closing the circle that was nicely started by my friend Jean Barrocca, who presented the real case of real innovation in public administration. So he beautifully demonstrated that innovating is possible. But he also raised a number of issues in terms of communication, and especially learning how to translate the innovation jargon into something that is understandable to policymakers. The piece of research that I will be presenting today goes a little bit in that direction, trying to use concepts that have been floating in the air for quite a long time, and also trying to renovate them in a way that can be more easily understood by lay persons, especially. So, what should I do? Oh, question for you. These two gentlemen here, what do they have in common? For sure, you know the one on the right-hand side. What you should also know is that the gentleman on the left-hand side, Thomas Jefferson, has been one of the very first presidents of the United States, coming into office in 1801. And during his speech, his first speech to the Americans, he introduced for the first time this concept of frugal government, not only frugal, as you can see, also wise, meaning a kind of approach that, let's say, lives and lets live in a way, like in an old movie of James Bond. The laissez-faire concept, the full liberalist vision that was en vogue at that time, was translated in a quite smart way, especially, let's say, trying to establish a division of work between civil society and government. And it is quite curious to learn that another thing that these two gentlemen have in common is that under the presidency of Barack Obama, the Americans, have experienced the slowest growth rate ever in public sector expenditure, according to these statistics that I am showing and have a long story behind. I can assure they are true. Of course, government is not only about spending, it is also about taxation. You see here that despite the slower rate of growth in government expenditure, still it is going up, and taxation is trying hard to follow, but not that well. If we compare the situation in the United States with that in Europe, and especially in the Eurozone, you know that a subset of Europe's member states are actually using euro as a currency. So the blue line that you see here has to do with the behavior of those countries that are actually in the Eurozone. You see that if we look at the government expenditure over time, the decrease is very prominent, especially in the European scenario, much less prominent in the United States. China, soon to become the largest country in the world, has started to publish statistics on government expenditure, and this picture here shows, especially the bubble on the right-hand side, that about 4/5 of government expenditure in China belongs to local government. It is being spent locally, while taxation is more or less half and half. This is the opposite of what happens in Western countries. This picture here shows that despite the ups and downs in the trends, still we have 25% of GDP belonging to central government expenditure in the US, so federal expenditure, while only a little bit more than 10% belongs to local government. These trends are confirmed in Europe. This picture says nothing to you, but it only means that there are statistics that are exploring these trends and also the reciprocal interaction between expenditure that is being done at local level and at national level in the different European countries. This is actually tax revenue. Next is about expenditure. Why am I speaking about all this? The reason is that, as you all know, since 2008, due to the big crisis that exploded all over the world, governments, especially in Europe, like one of my pictures has shown, have been called to a deep restructuring of their ways of operation. They have been somehow forced to spend less, just because there was no longer money available. The example mentioned by Jean before is extremely inspiring. At the beginning of the millennium, there was money all around. Now, there is no money at all. And so this has created a mechanism of learning and transformation that my research is trying to monitor at European and also global level, drawing the distinction between what happens at national level and what happens at local level. So from now on, I will narrow the focus on local governments behavior. As shown by the pictures in this slide, when we think of local government, we typically think of a number of services that are being provided to the citizens to fulfill several administrative and institutional functions. There are many ways to provide taxonomies of these services. One is displayed here. We make the distinction on one hand between administrative and industrial services. Administrative means that they are provided in fulfillment of legislative and regulatory commitments. Industrial, that there is a kind of organization often requiring the adoption of technologies, for sure human resources, and also with the aim of somehow breaking even, so covering the costs with revenues from the sale of these services. Another important distinction is between universal services and services that are provided on demand. And you see that at the crossing between these two axes, there are examples of services belonging to the various categories. This is another way of classifying, categorizing public services provided at local level especially, and they use, and it uses the, let's say, approach of profiling the users. So you see that for every row in this table, there is a possible role that each of us as citizen can take on, and in association with the role, for example, of voter or taxpayer and so on, there is an example of a typical requirement that government is expected to fulfill. What this table tells us is that requirements are very important. In principle, what governments do or should do is to start from an exploration, a description, an examination of citizen requirements, and then provide services in response. Another important thing that this table tells us, which is somehow hidden between the lines, is that in doing so, governments have to abide by the law. And this is because, in many cases, fulfilling someone's requirements may go against the fulfillment of other person's requirements that are equally legitimate. So the rule of law is somehow like a policeman or like a ruler that creates more discipline in the execution of government action. This and a number of slides that follow are my attempt to describe this approach, the way it works, and the complications to the picture that are now given by many of the examples that we have listened to before the coffee break. So I apologize for the schemes, but I think it is a quick way to express my ideas and try to share them with you and collect objections, especially from you. So we start by the requirements, like I said. Then the rule of law does a kind of filtering, and then the services are provided to the citizens. If we compare this with what happens in the private sector, you see that the main difference lies in the fact that enterprises, services enterprises, are pushed by the selfish interest of making money out of this. So the expectation of profit is what typically makes a difference with respect to public services. But we are also started to learn about initiatives that are pushed from the bottom up, from civil society, with some ambition to start changing the world. So what we can say is that here the big driver of this innovation in service delivery by the citizens, for the citizens, comes from a vision of the world that is to be improved by means of these efforts. We have also started to know about collaborations between the public and the private, and in this case, the P may mean many things like partnership or the principles that regulate this collaboration, or the word platform that may mean that these interactions are taking place through the support of technology. If you are still alive, I will introduce the very last complication to this picture, because we have so far talked about the delivery of services, but we haven't yet started to ask ourselves how these services are delivered. My idea, and of course it is a simplification to communicate these thoughts that I have to you, is that there are typically three main means, like production means, for the delivery of services that are listed in this slide. One is the collection of money from taxation. The examples that I showed at the beginning of this presentation put a very clear connection between what governments collect as taxes and the use that they make of these taxes in terms of services. A lot of ideologists, we know, that use this relationship to make the argument that this government here is spending too much, collecting too many taxes, and therefore something is going wrong in that respect. But the private sector can't collect taxes, so they must use money of their own, or lend borrow money from a bank to activate, to ignite the process. The new thing of the scenarios that we are now dealing with have to do with the fact that people use their own capacity as people to push the realization of these services when they are bottom-up, when they are created by civil society. This is the end of the complication. Now let's ask one more thing. What do we get in return out of this activity of service delivery? What we can say is that the public sector does this for many reasons, including being forced by law to do that, but basically what they get in return is political consensus. The chances of being re-elected. Companies, enterprises do this to make money. And the nice thing that we know from the examples we have at hand is that civil society typically does these initiatives to get in return a sense of fulfillment. Someone was making reference, I think it was Yvonne, to the fact that she would never do her job in Palermo just because she doesn't live here, while she has many other reasons additional to being a fan of coding and open data for doing this in Amsterdam, because she lives in Amsterdam and would like to do something positive for the community she lives in. This sense of fulfillment is very important, and the capacity of frugal government to create, to exploit, to create value out of this sense of fulfillment is a tremendously important part of the frugal government concept that I am trying to define. Finally, and this is the core of my argument, living labs and other examples like the ones we have listened to, are example of public, private, and people collaboration. And the nice thing that happens in these examples is that the three production means that I mentioned before, money collected from taxation, money that enterprises own or borrow from banks, and especially the capacity, the creativity of people, the three things together, they converge and they become something unitary and unique. My definition of frugal government is that of a government that manages to put together these three aspects. Being parsimonious in the use of resources, because there is no money left, because you can't increase taxation beyond a certain level anymore, because there are budget cuts and the federal or national level cuts the yearly transfers to the local level of year after year to create more room for the national finances, leaving the local governments alone. So we have to be parsimonious, and this doesn't mean that we have to be efficient, because the concept of efficiency is very nice, but in many cases, the objection that we receive from local government officials facing these huge budget cuts is that, look, in this way, we can no more keep on delivering the services that are printed in the mission statement of our local government organization. So it is simply no more possible to act as in the old good times, where government alone could think of being more efficient and in this way keep on delivering services with fewer resources. What is required is the engagement of people. So the capacity and creativity of civil society, but also individual citizens, like in the many examples of co-creation that were presented before me, which requires a very important thing. You have to empower your users in the right way, let them participate, let them innovate without being trapped or imprisoned by your usual and standard schemes. And this is the tricky part. I have no time, unless we want to discuss about this later, to speak about the difference between ceremonial participation and true participation. My personal opinion is that 95% of the examples that we all know about of successful participation, they are not even getting to the point, which explains why, in so many cases, what we get in return is something that evaporates right after the end of the experimentation. And finally, the third thing that is more important is the delivery of value to the people around you, which is something you must do, because keep in mind, civil society does things to get a sense of fulfillment in return. So you have to demonstrate that there is some value in what you do that is not only value for the community, but also and particularly value for the individual person that is playing this game together with government representatives. I will skip this. It was just to say that you need a forward-looking, not simply a static approach to create the conditions for this to happen. And so this is the last complicated slide of my series. What we get in return from this public-private people collaboration is basically two things. Of course, if we as government officials and also advisors, we might add to government officials, act in the right way, what we get in return is basically two things. One is generalized satisfaction in your community and in the people who have taken part in the game. Second is a new category of services that never existed before, which fulfill the same goals of public administration as before, but in a totally different way. I have no time in this presentation to make a list, and a list especially of case studies, but for example, most of the case studies that Jesse mentioned, taken out of the World Bank book, World Bank Plus in-all book, if we disintegrate them, it is extremely likely that what we can get is a set of examples of these innovative services that we provocatively call human smart. And this is a provocation because many smart services are apparently delivered in modern times by the combination of technology, especially ICT technology, with traditional government functions. This is, of course, familiar to all of us as part, in many ways, of the European or global smart city movement. Yet, these services here, most of them still in their experimentation phase, so very few of them permanently institutionalized, embedded in the socio-economic and institutional system of the cities, of the governments where they are aimed to give influence to. Most of these services, they are traditional because they are based on the simple mechanism that if you have money with you, if you, government official, have money with you coming from either taxation or either the public funding, the public grant from an external institution like the European Commission, then you can do marvelous things with technologies. The problem is that very rarely these marvelous things go to the point of making the change that you really require in order to establish these innovations forever. The characteristics that we have spotted of these new services that have as prominent part the human factor, the active contribution of civil society and people, are at least these three. First, they generate behavioral change. Unless you get behavioral change, and this is, again, what Jean said in his speech, there is no point in creating costly infrastructures having to do with mobility or public transportation or car sharing or whatever, unless the people are so involved in the common goals of government initiative that they themselves adhere to these goals and these principles and make their own contribution of starting to share or starting to change themselves. Second, these are services that become viral because this is evidence from the few successful examples of participation we are familiar with. People love participating, and during and after participation, they are so fond of it that they go home and speak about what they have done to other people who were not there and become more and more involved. This is a viral mechanism that is very popular on the internet. Much of the Web 2.0 revolution has been based on the word of mouth, so that Facebook, for example, or other social networks, now they have so many millions or billions of users just because of these viral effects. As researchers, we do not know well enough the psychological mechanisms that that are behind or underlie these viral effects. We are doing research on that. There are words like gamification, or more generally, the presentation of systems of incentive that can be at the level of the people and not floating in the air, so that people can recognize that these incentives are valuable to them. And this may be a positive contribution in this direction, but I repeat, we still need to do empirical research, especially on real cases, to make sure that this is the case. And finally, these services are here to last, not just till the end of the funded period, but as a permanent transformation of the situation. I will skip this. This is a familiar to some quality experts representation of the way a service is delivered. This is just to emphasize that there are two main additions in the human smart government services we are talking about, that are basically the interaction with citizens up to the point of co-creation and the impact on behavior. And so a number of gaps that traditional service science identifies on the left-hand side of this slide, they are actually being solved, or at least partly offset, by the introduction of these elements that I have been describing in my presentation. So to conclude, this is the link between people who lived at so much distance, but this is also the link with this fresco that you may not be familiar with. This fresco comes from the government building in Siena. Siena is one of the oldest free and self-governing cities in the world. This fresco shows the positive effects of what I am trying to propose to call frugal government to the people who are members of the community. And there is another fresco in front of this showing the bad examples of the improper usage of the same principles by the people in charge of the government. So what we are aiming at is to ignite a process like this that starts with few and goes on up to the level that the benefits of collective action becomes shared. I think I can stop here, and I look forward especially to your objections and not only questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Francesco, for such an interesting point. I think that crisis and austerity have generated a very interesting feedback between the rise of social innovation, smart approach to the provision of services, and on the other, on the restructuring of public policy. I think that there is an equilibrium which has not been reached yet, no? And I think that reaching this equilibrium is a critical point, because you can affect equilibrium within the public sector. For example, the automatization in the industrial chains is affecting equilibrium in the economy, because you push out of the labor markets an increasing number of workers, no? So do we have something, a receipt, in order to, a solution, in order to foresee this equilibrium and try through public policy to avoid the negative effects of breaking this equilibrium?
In one word, for me the issue is capacity building And like Jesse said, I think, before me, capacity building of civil servants and policymakers is what we need the most if we want to start changing the world around us. But in order to achieve this, again, the traditional approaches are proven ineffective. So we need to think of something more, something else than the usual stuff. Before doing so, what we need to do is to find a common level of understanding and exchange between us who pretend to be, let's say, more visionary or simply forward-looking than the 4-year term of the policymaker, or the even narrower sight of the standard civil servant, only thinking in terms of the most immediate tasks. This common ground has yet to be found. I think it is important that we build knowledge on the top of the experiences that are already here with us. And we create grammars of communication. This is only an example. There can be other examples where the implicit aspects can be highlighted and turned into guidelines that are immediate to grasp. The way of doing this, I think, has to be found through action research, through trial and error. The good news is that in many places where decisions are taken, and I am especially thinking of the European Union programs, for example, supporting financially inter-regional cooperation, not to speak of the national programs supporting regions in the development of their own capacities. A growing attention to capacity building of public administration is being given, also with the awareness that something else has to be found and implemented in a way that is, again, trial and error based. I don't know if I answered your question, but this is at least one of the challenges that I see in front of us.
Thank you. Alessandro Piranesi? Here I come. Thank you.
Last but least, in this case, maybe we have to say. And thank you very much. I'm not sure I've understood really the point of frugal government, even if it's very interesting, I think. I'll have to make some questions to go deeper with the previews. What I want to say about the frugal government is that it's very inspiring, and as a deputy mayor in my previous life, I was lucky enough to have experienced the frugal government in the reality, in the deep reality. And in 5 years, me and my administration were able to cut global expenditure of the 20% in 5 years. So I actually know something about what is the frugal government and what does it mean right now to produce policies in this very domain where the government itself doesn't have the opportunity to produce the policies. So we didn't get to any agreement before, and it's quite fun to understand that we are talking about mostly the same things from different points of view. And we are in a way like complementary, and it's quite fun for me to be the last one, because I'm maybe supposed to be like the one who summarizes something, but I want to do it because I have my own presentation, of course. So, and I will talk about change, of course. That's because I work like a change manager, and I've been working as a change manager for maybe 15 years. And I will try to, in a way, problematize the concept of change, and maybe two ways to understand how the change can be produced. And the verb that you see in the title, actually nudge, as you may know, refers to the act of push, and that's why I want to use right now today the nudge. In Italian, maybe nudge can be translated with spintarella, spinta, give a push, spintarella. So spintarella means giving, in a way, a help, a small help to do something. And we're talking about change, and so we're talking about problems, and problems that always are wicked ones. There's no, very seldom happens that a government or a policymaker has to deal with a very easy problem. They're always wicked ones. They are always problemi bastardi, difficult to be resolved. And they are very clear into the politician mind. And it's very fun because most of my presentation today will deal with the concept of you have to deal with the politician. And in this sense, what is? Sorry? Okay. No. There's something wrong. No, it's not the right version, I think. No. No, because he has to be updated. Sorry. Is it online? Are you sure? It's not working, I think. Sorry, it's about technology always. So, when we wait for the presentation to be fixed, I just wanted to say that last week I was. This is the other one, okay? This is the right one. I was lucky enough to be here to have another lecture about this very topic. We were having our, okay, cool. Come on, okay, next one, okay, back. Okay, this one. And I was lucky enough to have a lecture about this very topic, and the topic was how to make the solution real after you've designed them. Because the City as a Service School was about how to design, how to overcome specific problems, but I was supposed to tell something about the fact that you always have to deal with one specific actor into the policy network that you have in front of you, and the very actor you have to deal, and you have to overcome, to come to a solution or to agreement, is actually the mayor. So this was the title of the presentation. That's me. These are some of the activities I'm dealing with, I'm involved in, and I'm partner of a small boutique consultancy named Gruppo, based in Bologna. And I am one of the founders of Future Food Institute, that is actually a trust that wants to produce innovation about food. Many of the things I'm dealing with are about food because of the expo and because of the foodie movement that we are experiencing here in Italy. And that's me, of course, dealing with the fish. And this picture refers to one of my passions, that is cooking, but refers also to the fact that you have to be, in a way, be prepared to deal with nasty stuff, because politics are nasty stuff. So you have to be prepared. You have to have skills to deal with nasty stuff every day of your life. And some of the things I'm dealing with today, right now, when we're talking in Milan, there's a big conference about the Milan Charter. There is like the final document of the Expo, and this was a hackathon that we produced 2 weeks ago in Expo with like 100 people from all over the world trying to come up with some solution about the malnutrition. And this is another workshop that we are working in London in 2 weeks about food, blah, blah, blah. And this is another research that we are developing into these other Milan Center for Food Law and Policy that actually I designed 2 years ago. And this is the research about the urban right to food, a concept that we are trying to develop into within the Expo framework, let's say. And, okay, I'll skip something, okay, because too many. Okay, what I want to say today is something related to the governance. Maybe all the morning we've been talking about the governance, even if I haven't heard this word in a very explicit way, I think. And what is governance? Governance, as you can see, I use the Lego just because I've recently obtained my certification of Lego Serious Play Facilitator, so I want always to use the minifigures, of course. And what is the governance? Governance isn't something that you can understand or you can see as a in a way still way. The governance is always, I read, an outcome of interaction among humans and artifacts. So it's something that, in a way, always happens and that you can't understand right here and right now. Using the framework of action network theory by Bruno Latour, I don't know how many of you are like familiar with this kind of stuff. I don't think you are many. This theory tries to outline that the world is made partly by humans and partly by objects. And the objects are actually everything, like everything happens into a curd, everything happening into today here, this mic or this pointer, everything is like acting with a specific, as they say, agency in a way. Okay. So this is the point. What is governance today, and why and how can we produce policies within this domain of governance that isn't very clear? One point, the very first point is about the locality, we could say. What works here won't work there. The local contexts are pretty unique and can be reproduced. That means that every recipe, every way we try to understand how to, from an engineering point of view, as maybe you said before, we try to understand in a very engineering point of view framework how to resolve that specific problem isn't applicable to another concept. So this is the very first lesson learned that we have to deal with. This is the second. Who's that man? Do you know him? Anybody in the room knows this man? Ignazio Marino. Ignazio Marino, for the ones that are not Italian, is the almost former mayor of Rome. And because Rome is in North Italian? Yeah, he's actually Italian, of course. And he's been using the tool of change from his election on all the time as a tool to pursue consensus. And consensus actually is the very research and the very goal that every mayor tries to have in his activity. So No other goal is really into the commitment of a mayor. Only the consensus, like in a way, is important for him. And the use of change actually was used for that precise motivation. And what happened later on is maybe a news that everybody knows today. And the second point is about the networks. This is a network analysis. And the actors into the governance in every local system are too many, are way too many, at every scale, of course. If you are in the small city in Portugal, or if you are in New York City, or if you are in Palermo, all the actors that are involved into the production of the policy are way too many and always are overlapped. So it's very difficult to understand how they works. And we call them the policy network to intend something that is related to a specific policy. So in a vertical way, we can understand that the housing policies, for example, are like describable with the policy network that actually work on them and try to make them real. And this is the point. They are a mess, so it's not easy to understand them. So this is the second point. And the third one, talking about the fact that the governance is actually an outcome, something that is describable and understandable after something that is happening here and there. The very point is that description of reality into the vision for the mayors and for the administration and for all the actors involved into the production of specific policies refers to a dream or dreamy way to describe reality. For example, this one, I don't know how many of you remember that famous scene of an Italian movie by Nanni Moretti, where there was a mayor describing its vision about the town or the island of, I don't know, Stromboli or something like that. And he imagined like all the boulevards and all the lights and all the music into the streets of the island. And this is about the vision. And the vision of the city is produced into the conversation between the politicians on one hand and all the other actors on the other hand, of course. This leads us to understand that all the stuff of governance is actually a sort of monopoly game, and actually is a very risky one. So all the practitioners, all the academics, all the, I don't know, all the people involved into the, in a way, into the domain of policy making have to deal with this kind of game full of traps and full of steps to be followed, okay? Okay. Implementation. Just to give you a short definition of implementation taken from the Wikipedia, so a very general one. In political science, implementation refers to the carrying out of the public policy. Legislatures pass laws and are then carried out by public servants working in bureaucratic agencies. The process consists in rule-making, rule administration, and rule adjudication. Factors impacting implementation include the blah, 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 blah. Okay. There's no specific algorithm applicable to this solution, of course, because every single case of implementation, either if you are in Palermo or in, I don't know, in Rome, follow very different processes. And if you're brave enough to read the very infamous book Implementation by Aaron Wildavsky, you will see a description live of 400 pages about how a policy was developed in Oakland and blah, blah, blah. And so no specific algorithm is possible. So the point and the question is, who really governs the city? Who is really our, like, the actor who to sell the solution to when we are in, like, seeing and trying to understand the city as a service. My point is about the incentives, and this is one of the points I tried to develop last week in Erice into the school. The leverage of selective incentives actually is the very point where of the tool you have to use to understand how to satisfy each of the actors of the policy network. When you haven't understood, of course, what is your policy network and who are the actors involved into the solution. So for each of every single actor you have in front of you, you have to understand what is the incentive he will like, what is like the leverage to use to make him move and to obtain his consensus about your solution. Talking about monopoly, shit happens, of course. So you have to be very, in a way, prepared to understand what is happening today and what are the solutions that, what are the problems that actually are like affecting the way I am understanding and I try to figure out my solution. And for example, this I don't know how many of you are familiar with the play of Monopoly, and you have been elected chairman of board of directors. What happens? I know many people that were like very fond of innovation, very like into the non-profit stuff, but actually they have been like working into the politics. And so one day they stopped being innovators and they started being like institutional entrepreneurs. So this is a typical trap that you go through when you try to make some like a policy innovation. Or for example, this is another car. This car may be kept until needed sold. Get out of the jail free. Of course, this is another kind of problem. And okay, so the point of today is between like a comparison between the nudging approach and the other one is the user-centered approach that can be used in describing and actually making the policies. Many of the speakers before me have tried to understand or to give some contribution about how the user-centered approach can be used. And what I just very briefly want to try to figure out is about how can we tackle the problem of giving solutions to the city from like a forecasting point of view, forecasting framework, knowing that actually nothing can be really foreseen. Because when we're dealing with the wicked problem, there are many, many, many variables that happen every day that can affect the way that we try to plan. What I didn't say is that I have a planning background in my academic background, of course. And this is one of the points I learned so far, that you can't plan. Because in LA, I mostly deal with the Italian environment, and what I know is that every single tool of planning, of urban planning, is done to be not like used. It's just paper. It's just paper, and I'm not exaggerating at all, of course. Just paper, because it's a way to understand how could be the development of the city in next years, but actually the reality comes in and you have to change your mind. And so, from a forecasting way to think, and to another one that is based on what the people really do every day. So I don't want to forecast anything. Okay, I can use some big data, but I want to use to be user-centered with the policies, and this means that I have to understand what really people do every single day. And so this leads us to the last part of the intervention. What is nudging as a regulative approach? Some of the speakers before have tried to give an answer to how could we design a regulatory approach that is actually usable and effective in a way. So this is the nudging one, for example. As you can see, the spintarella, the big elephant pushes the small elephant to understand and to be able to walk. And what is nudge theory? Again, from Wikipedia. Nudge theory is a concept in behavioral sciences, political theory, and economics, which argues that positive reinforcement and indirect suggestions to try to achieve non-force compliance can influence the motives, the incentives, and decision-making of groups and individuals, at least as effectively, if not more effectively, than direct instruction, legislation, and enforcement. I don't know if it's pretty clear. I don't know how many of you are, again, familiar with the point. This is maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, this was called libertarian paternalism. And that is an oxymoron, of course. And on one hand, the paternalism addresses the fact that you are saying what has to be done and what is good to be done into the city. You don't want to understand how really people act or how people want to act, but you are in a very top-down perspective, and in a very top-down perspective, trying to say what is good to be done, okay? In the US, the Obama administration adopted this approach, building up a nudge unit, so a specific office that tried to design specific policies in very different fields, like health on one hand, or tax payment on the other hand, or economic stuff, blah, blah, blah. And this is a way to tackle the problem of intervening on the behavioral way people act and people understand the policy. Either you're talking of, I don't know, justice or civil justice, for example, one of the fields I deal with every day, or the traffic lights in the city, or the garbage. Every single field can be treated with this approach. It's a way to intervene on the inertia, because you know that inertia always goes on one direction. As many organizational theorists would say, it's all about the path dependency, because once you have a path, and then you are more likely to go on in a specific direction. And actually, the nudge theory argues that it's possible to cheat with the citizen in a way, and try to put some traps, some behavioral traps into the path of the people in order to make them behave in a specific way, okay? This is one of the most typical examples of cheating with the mind of the citizen. As you can see, this one, is this pointer? No, it doesn't work, okay. What you see there is like a toilet, okay, where usually men go to pee, as you can see, okay. And that one is a fly, and it's the design behind this kind of solution is that you have to hit the fly in order to pee just in the very toilet, not outside the toilet. So it's a way to fix the very heavy problem of the pee outside of the toilet, of course. And what I want to say today, just to summarize and to be very brief, is that this is an approach, but this is another approach. What happens in the city every single day is not that people pee outside out of the toilet. Not only that, The very point is that most of the time people act in a very different way instead of the one you are thinking them to do. And so, for example, this is a path, a design path, and this is the way on the right side, the way the people actually behaved. And this is the way the urban space actually has been changed into the behavior of people. So not only trying to understand how to cheat with the citizen, but focus on the use that the city that has been really produced by the citizens. And this is the most important lesson learned of the approach of user-centered policies that actually we were trying to develop. Choices are always bad in a way from a public perspective, because private citizens don't have the capacities of thinking from a public perspective. They don't want to pursue the public interest, never, because every one of us want to pursue only the private interest. So on one hand, you can like cheat, trying to regulate the way people act, trying to make them more collective in one way, and the other one is to test actually how people choose and why they choose in this way. So I come to the last slide with this part, frame the policy window. This is like a way to summarize all the intervention, thinking about we as a maybe community of people that are actually not policymaker, or at least no more policymaker, just like me, but they are part of a community of people that actually produce the policies. Policies are not produced by the government, not only by the government, but they are produced by, I wouldn't like to use the word practitioner, because I don't really like it, but I would use more likely the word like a policy community, we could call it like that. And maybe the box could be the living lab, maybe another one, maybe in general what we are doing every single day, trying to address some specific problem to a solution. And the point of the policy window, thinking to another typical concept of the policy analysis, mostly of the states, is that the policy window is that moment where something opens and helps you go into and give your solution. So my suggestion and what I think for all of us, what I hope for all of us, is to be in the right place, in the right moment, to give the right solution. Thank you.
We are slightly late with the schedule, so my proposal is to kindly invite the public, from the audience, to pose some questions to the speakers. I think there will be Domenico that will collect the questions and translate if necessary. I invite the speakers to take their seat on the stage. Thank you.
Simone Tolmello, University of Lisbon. Thank all of you for very inspiring, interesting presentations. But you know, all through the presentation, there was some bottom line there I couldn't grasp. And I would like to thank Francesco Molinaro for having put it on the wall, which is Thomas Jefferson's famous quote, which is, "We have to cut," isn't it? I mean, like, I think that there was something like underlining all the discourse, which is we have no money. I mean, I would like everybody to remind, following Piketty, not a Marxian scholar, that after the Second World War, marginal tax on highest incomes in the US and in UK, not in USSR, was around 90%, 80, 90, then it dropped. And then while we were starting to cut this marginal rate tax, inequality started to grow again. So this is to say there is no money because this is a political decision. And I mean, I think it's really important to innovate procedures. I mean, great examples, really, like open government, open source, living labs, nudge approach, whatever. But there's a political decision somewhere, ain't it? And to quote a very good friend of mine, Roberto Falanga, is a psychologist working on participation, he say change needs change. I mean, when we throw, you know, to the society, whatever it is society, okay, do organize yourself, whatever, but without a political vision of what kind of society we want, maybe a more cohesive society, maybe a more just society, the risk is that all these kind of things, what Ignazio was saying, I mean, then in living labs, only the educated, the wealthy, those who have time to go to living labs participate. So my question is the same question I put yesterday. Is this change already embedded in this innovation which exists in the day-to-day life, or do we need structural change? Like completely changing what we point toward. I mean, somebody would say go beyond capitalism, but I don't want to go to that point.
Who is the target of the question?
Sfondi una porta aperta. Number one, I think everybody says there's no money, and there's tons of money. There's money all over the place. It's the residual money that they give people to play with, no? The residual money maybe is not there anymore. But then that is leading to people realizing that there's a ton of money around. And what is happening to that money is not at all clear, okay? And that is linked to the fact that we are in a global emergency, which is a democratic emergency. It's a financial system is collapsing, and the environment is, the problem is not just for our children to give them a future in the sense of a job or an education. The problem is to give them life, that they will still be alive in 50 years. And this is causing, the problem is most of the institutions are hiding from this fact, right? But what is becoming clear in this process of awareness is the amount of money that is around. Okay, even if you take out wars, even if you take out all of that kind of stuff, if you just look at a normal city's budget, they have a hell of a lot of money to spend. How are they spending it, and what are they spending it on? How are they spending the money to cover the holes in the street? That's where the thing is. And then the second point is that politicians only know how to spend money. If you go to a politician, you're bringing some kind of question or approach or method or proposal, and it's not costing a couple of million euro, you're not of any interest to them. And that is a second question. It is one thing is frugal government, which is the idea of, not the way you presented it, but the idea of spending money less, but doing the same thing with less money. And another thing is, how can we reinvent a politics that is not based on important transactions? Let's even suppose that people are not corrupt. And if I can just finally add, I think in your presentation, which is very interesting, the pity is that you lost, I thought, the best part. You had one column, which was the legal framework, the expectation of profit, and a vision of a better world. And you got rid of that part. But that is where the alignment needs to happen in order to enable, and I think your feedback loop of the human cities goes into, so the question is really to try to shift the boundaries of the arena. If the visions are constructed visions, and it's not just the mayor's visions, it's collective visions, which are, what is the object of negotiation, right? And the object of political negotiation has shifted. So the question is, how can we align legal frameworks, expectations of profit or whatever, and visions of a better world? That doesn't answer your question, but it sidesteps it rather.
Okay, just a few comments. Okay, there is plenty of money, but okay, just to make an example, there is an important regional government in Italy, from the south of Italy, not Sicily, that yesterday or 2 days ago went to headlines because they spent 50 million euros in buying 8 new high-speed trains for their railways. And after paying this amount of money and having the 8 trains with them, they realized they cannot go on the railway. So they will have to spend 50 million euros more in order, in another 5 years before having these 5 or 8 trains in operation. So there is plenty of money, but the mentality is the old-fashioned one. What I'm trying to say is that the people who made those mistakes cannot be asked to fix them. And if we wait long enough or short enough, these movements will gain so much momentum that there will be nothing else to do for these people, like in my example, than to adapt and adopt the results of these movements.
I can only agree totally with what has been said, and it is a question of mentality. Like, I'm sorry that you heard that it's all about becoming more efficient and being cheap, because I think it is a fact of the matter that ICT is becoming more driving efficiency and is becoming increasingly cheap. And this is something that governments need to deal with, that you don't have to spend 100,000 euros on an ICT system, but you can do it. I mean, there's a lovely example a really excellent example from America, the Obama healthcare website that cost like hundreds of millions of euros to create, and then it crashed day one. But I don't know if anybody knows how they fixed it. They brought in a team. They did what you said, that is so difficult, and it is not getting the people that created the problem to fix it, because they are unable to, and they need to first understand what the change can be, if they can at all. They brought in a team of 10 coders and designers. There's a book about it called, I think, Code Red, and they describe the process of how this team of 10 people fixed the entire system and brought Obamacare back to life. So definitely a good read. Yes, very frugal. Yes,
well, I would say that things will change regardless of what we do, and that's for sure. What I discuss here when we talk about there is very little money, it is the fact that, and what Jesse was saying, that if you just throw more money to the old ways of doing things, the money will, you will not notice the impact of the money. And the good thing of working with cities is that they do not change the game of taxation and everything. They do not establish those rules. So this is something that comes from above. But I do believe that more money in the case of Fundao would not solve the problem. It would even not create the opportunity for change. So if they didn't have the crisis, they would never have changed the game. We will be still building new buildings, and we would have employment thanks to public investment, thanks to the fact that we were creating more and more and more debt, public debt in that city. So having less money helps you to shift the way you think about things. And money is obviously a scarce resource, so talking about scarcity of money is talking about what do we need to do differently to achieve better results. It's a way of innovation. It's an incentive for innovation. What I do see as a huge opportunity in the usage of ICT, it's an opportunity of empowerment and leveling the playing field in terms of information and knowledge about common decisions. So looking at the urban arena as a commons, we do know that we had the experts and the politicians were free riders. And both, also at least in Portugal, the ones that had the power to build the construction sector, they were the free riders. They had the power to build, to rule, to take decisions as they wanted. Nowadays, things have changed. And leveling the playing field in terms of giving better information for everyone and allowing everyone to discuss common decisions is one of the most fantastic impacts that we have through these new participation opportunities that ICT brings. So it's not only a matter of money, it's a matter of how we are ruling the common places that we share on urban environments, in my view.
What I want to add is that is also a matter, or maybe mostly a matter of democracy, because everything we are saying refers to actually the ability and the competence of people to overcome what in the debate, the global debate always is called like reform. And what we have to understand about reforming the institution and the administration is that no administration, no level of local government is able to reform itself, never. So when you are, for example, at the regional level or at the municipal level or at the state level, you're never able to do it. This is the real, this is what we are facing today in Italy, for example. And so it's a problem of democracy, because when you are like admitting or thinking of this, so that every single level is not able to reform itself, you are like giving some room to the diminution of democracy. So this is a very important point, I think. I don't know how many of you remember that 2 years ago in Italy we had a specific program related to the cut of expenditures of public expenditures. Nobody, of course, because there was like a commissioner that had this kind of task to be done by the government, but actually this task remains into some office in Rome. So I think that people should become more like able to understand how to reform themselves, and then some change will happen, I think.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have no time more, so I would like to thank. There's another question. Okay.
Yes,
so please.
it's a very straight question to one of the speakers.
It's just a remark, actually. I mean, we were, of course, efficiency, efficiency and the costs are important, and corruption is important, this debate, but we are close also to the main point, that is also money. But we are not talking, we're always talking about reforms, but we never think about, or maybe in the main debate, we don't think about reform money. Because actually, yeah, the assumption is money is created out of nothing. I mean, I think that the future society will judge us as, I don't know how they will judge us, but maybe they will think that we were a bit stupid because we were fighting for something created out of nothing. I'm sorry to introduce this topic. Maybe it's a broad topic, but we should think about, and there are places where they are thinking about how to reform the monetary systems. Like Iceland, Great Britain is starting to think about it. So it is already the point. It is also the point, and maybe we should talk about it. Thank you.
There is anybody is willing to respond? Or is it was assertive, your intervention, yeah? Yeah, okay.
All the speakers agree with the question. Very nice. I would like to thank you again. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. Thanks you again for your contribution to this conference. Thank you, Professor Ignacio Vinci, that was our chairman today. I would like to thank all the volunteers, our official photographer, Luca Salettiere, and all the people involved in this event. Now there is, of course, lunchtime, starting from 2 p.m. Here there's going to be another session. Another session will be hosted at Bottega 3, and then we will have the closing session at 4 p.m. hosted by Comune di Palermo. So please have a really quick lunch and then come here or the Bottega 3 in order to continue our event. Thank you.